And Sarah.
And Sarah. And we are doing the Rhodes trial today.
It's a little bit distracting, isn't
it
it?
is. It is.
No hug for me?
So, we're doing the Rhodes Day 2 sentencing. We're at Verdict Watch right now live. So we'll see if we can get caught up and maybe have a verdict by then.
Verdict Watch?
Yeah.
He's
What?
guilty.
We're not sentencing watch.
Sentencing Watch.
Well, they call it Verdict Watch, whatever.
No,
Oh, verdict. We already have a verdict. So.
That was 2 days ago.
Well, a verdict in sentencing type thing.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, just don't look at the
mind
chat.
Him.
I
Hello,
don't want...
Jessica B. How's it going?
Hey, Jessica. Yeah.
Don't mind Dali. Dali doesn't know what he's talking about.
Doctor, if you could just come right up here.
Jessica B, if you're new here, that is the defendant down there after a glow up.
Yes.
Thank you. You may have a seat.
Jessica B, have you been around in my chat the last few days? Are you up to date with what's going on with this case?
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Let us know if you aren't familiar.
Yeah. Oh, hello, Venus or Venus, whatever your name is, Bobby. Hey, Stu. How are you? Okay, so day 2 of the, I don't know what
sentencing.
Verdict Watch.
Oh, verdict, because the jury's out right now deliberating the sentence.
That's weird.
So I guess
it's all a bit misleading, isn't it? Okay,
it's still a verdict.
Okay, I suppose so. He's all the guilties. We know that. So the jury is deciding whether or not they give him life with parole, life without parole, and if there is parole, does he get a day when he's 80?
Yeah.
Or do they give him 2 days when he's 79? Or basically, what are they going to give him? Just a slim hope of maybe when he's 78 that he might get out for 3 days to go pee.
Yeah.
Maybe get his colostomy bag changed, that kind of thing.
Lovely.
But so now we're just doing a speedy catch up on what's happened throughout the day, because we never know what kind of people came in and chitty chatted about him and all his glorious life. And also people who spoke about what a bad man he's been.
Yes.
So let's go. Let's have fun.
Identify yourself for the jury, please.
My name is James Garbarino. Garbarino.
Hey, Stray.
I'm going to have you sort of introduce yourself and your areas of expertise and things like that. First,
definitely
can
all
you
the
start with
guilties.
College, things like that.
Well, I went to college at St. Lawrence University in northern New York State.
Did you, Jessica? I hope you had fun.
Got my degree in 1968. I went to Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, and got a master's degree in 1970, and my PhD in human development with a specialization in developmental psychology in 1973. So this is the 50th anniversary of my...
Can you turn it up, please? Because everyone kept telling me to turn it up constantly, and I'm
really
just going to keep telling you to turn it up.
Human experience, trauma, child abuse, violence. Done work in war zones around the world, in the Middle East and Central America. So of all the bad places and bad things, for the last 30 years, I particularly focused on the developmental issues in children and adolescents that ultimately...
Oh, they're going to keep talking about how he's very...
Oh, so he worked in war zones? So all the bad shit George Bush and Obama did, he's trying to fix?
Hello,
I'm fashionably late. I'm having a ponytail emergency. My ponytail decided to, I don't know. I'm trying to hide my headband. Okay, never mind. Hello and welcome back. You were actually, the only way I could figure out how to do this was to live stream your stream in order to get you into Rumble and get you into Kick. So you're on Crime Spies, Kick, Rumble, and YouTube right now. Say hello.
Hello.
I need to do Rumble sometime.
Oh,
You
I
need to
love
do Rumble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Crime Spies, welcome back. And now we are on a different channel, even though it looks exactly like the same channel. Isn't that
It looks
magical?
beautiful. It looks beautiful. And for those
So-
of you on the Crime Spies side, check out the artwork in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Isn't that delightful?
It is.
Would you like to
All-
explain how that came together?
Okay, so the other day when the court was just doing nothing for like an hour and a half, and I didn't have.
That turned into an hour and 20 minutes. That one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I didn't have any like guests on panel to chitty chat to, and I had, I don't know, 20, 30 people. I think it was about 30 people in chat who were sticking around with me, being very patient. So what I decided to do was take Mr. Rhodes into Photoshop and give him a glow up. So that is a completely crowdsourced glow up. Everything I did to him was completely, everybody was like, okay, make his lips bigger, give him a chola lip. I believe that's called a chola lip. So it's got like the darker lip liner, which goes a little bit lighter in the middle. His lip is absolutely, it's much like he's got a fat lip anyway, but it's definitely a lot fatter and it's got a little smile to it. He's got much more cheekbone to him, lots of highlights, all the makeup. He has a little P already as a tattoo, but we added Usi to it.
Wait, I know I gotta bring it down here. I gotta check that out.
Yeah,
on
he's
my
got,
other screen, so I don't look like I'm, staring at the floor.
yeah, and a geisha wig, obviously, and mascara and all the eyeliner fleeks, and he's definitely got the geisha wig, obviously. So that took an hour and 20 minutes of. I could have done it quicker, but we all had a lot of insight into it. So that was fun.
They were gonna come back.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a
Bobby was
break.
like, we yelled
And-
"Cola, cola" at her a lot, and kept messaging me all the pictures, and they were like, "Look in your messages, look at this, look at that," and I'm like, guys, stop it, just let me do it.
Let's do
It was
start.
kind of funny.
The charges,
Let's go.
trying to understand how they get to that point. That's really been the focus in the last
Hey,
30
Justice
years.
Smith.
But throughout that period, I've been a college professor teaching psychology, developmental psychology at Penn State.
Now, who is this
University,
guy? I'm so
Cornell,
sorry.
at Loyola University of Chicago.
He does research into kids, not that way, like a psychiatrist or whatever, but studies trauma. Worked with like kids or people in war zones. So
Okay,
it's my
good.
comment about George Bush and Obama.
I was president
Bobby,
of
you
Yeah.
always have to
an
correct me,
institute
don't
in
you?
Chicago called the Erickson Institute for
You're
Advanced
such a man.
Psychological Development. But as I said, throughout that period, I've always had one foot in the university teaching and doing research, and the other foot out in the rest
I
of
feel
the
like he's
world,
got one foot in the grave.
I was going to say that.
One foot in the grave and one foot on the banana peel is what I say.
Yeah.
Well, I've been very fortunate that my work has been recognized by a number of professional organizations.
Are we on
American
1.25?
Psychological Association.
Because if we're
gave me
not,
their
we should be on
award for professional
1.5.
contributions to
Okay.
public
Let
service.
me know if it's too fast.
The American
He
Humane
talks
Association gave me an
slow.
award for work on child abuse. American Academy of Pediatrics gave me an award for work on violence. So there's quite a few of those. One that's I think sort of interesting in 2018, the American Psychological
That's
Association
better.
named me one of 33 quote, influential psychologists in America. Not the most influential, but in that group. And that was particularly for the work I've done on the impact of trauma on the development of children and youth.
Now,
Thanks,
we've brought you here
Thank you, Bob.
as an expert for the defense.
Much
Is
appreciated.
that the only sort of expertise that you do working for the defense?
Well, over 30 years, it's been almost always for the defense because they're the ones who ask. I have worked a couple of times as an expert witness for the state in murder cases. But I think since what I'm trying to do typically is understand how a killer got to the point where they committed homicides. Hope I'm not stepping on any toes, but the state typically doesn't want me to do that. They want a more simple sort of judgment. So twice, I think in 30 years, I've worked for the state.
Did you also consult the FBI?
Yes, that was one of the organizations I consulted with the FBI on school violence. Probably some of you old enough to remember the Columbine school shooting. That was something I was very involved in. And I've also been a consultant to a wide range of organizations in the United States and around the world. National Institute of Mental Health, American Medical Association, Black Child Development Institute, and abroad, UNICEF. I went to Iraq and Kuwait for UNICEF back in the early 1990s when I was focusing on children in war zones. So I've, as I said, I've always had one foot outside the university.
Now I want to bring you in and ask you some questions about this situation, about this case. Okay, sir. Can you tell the jury what you examined in order to draw some conclusions in Mr. Rhodes' situation?
Well, so you'll probably become aware, this is sort of an unusual case in the sense that ordinarily what I would do would be review reports and documents from other experts and records, educational or mental health records. And then typically I would spend some
Well,
time
I'm
with the defendant
confused.
one-on-one talking about their life, trying to get some insight into them. That was not possible here because of his willingness to meet with experts. So I've relied on the very detailed information developed by the defense team.
Thank you for the super chat, X-Comer.
Family members and others. As you'll hear later, there's one
And the
particular
riddle.
questions that ordinarily
Yes.
I would have posed to him directly, but here we had to rely on material developed by others to answer those questions. So that's the kind of information
Penis?
that is available to me, really quite extensive.
I have no idea,
I think
Comer.
it gave me a good basis for applying my analysis to who he is and how it got to be that way.
And what you're referring to specifically are called the ACEs, right?
Well, that's certainly part of it. If I can sort of introduce what I'm trying to do, oftentimes there's a lot of information. What's missing sometimes is how to make sense of it, how to put the pieces together. And I don't know how many of you are.
Can I Google
I'll
it?
give you a mathematical example.
Good idea.
If I were to give you a series of numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, 11, and 17, if you didn't know anything about numbers, you might just say that's just a bunch of numbers. But if you had some arithmetic, you'd say, well, those are all odd numbers, which they are. But if I, excuse me.
Jesus, dude.
But if I tell you the number 2 is on that list and the number 9 is not, well, obviously they're not odd numbers because 2 is not, is not an odd number and 9 is. So you'd be left with a bunch of numbers again. It's only if you have the concept of what's called a prime number. A prime number is a number that can be divided only by 1 or by itself.
Never mind.
Then it all makes sense. Those are all prime numbers. And you would know that between 11 and 17, there's a missing prime number of 13. So what I'm trying to do is make sense of all this information based on research and theory from developmental.
You're failing, sir.
Because I know we tend to think often there are senseless acts of violence. But I think if you
Can
get
we
into
fast
the
forward through his
you can make
garbage?
sense from the point of view of the perpetrator, at least while they're committing the crime. So that doesn't excuse it, but it's.
I'll go forward a little more and see.
And almost all of them have.
If he
scores of
actually
1.
says
Only
anything about Brice.
1 in 100 people get a score of 7 or more.
Have you watched this already,
Only
Crime
1 in 1,000
Spies?
get a score of 8, 9,
I have
10.
not.
So it takes us from a
I
general question, did this person
purposely
have a difficult
have
childhood? How difficult was their childhood
avoided
compared with
Also,
everybody else?
basically
I've
most social
interviewed
media all day.
Guys who've been involved in murders, the average score is 7.
But
The average guy has more adversity than 99 out of 100 people. So that's an important sort of benchmark in all of this.
speak without a
I don't know
mouth
what
and
your
hear
scores were.
without
You
ears.
filled them out, but you
I have no
chances are, since you're
body,
functioning well enough to
but
be
I
here,
come
that you're
alive
doing
with
probably a
wins.
pretty low scores. Some of you might have higher scores, and that would be, congratulations for overcoming that adversity.
That's quite
This
the
individual,
riddle.
Brice, again, I wasn't able to give it to him directly. I had to rely on information developed by the team. We did interviews with all kinds of people, family members and others, looking at records. And the conclusion was that he had yes to 8 of the 10 questions, which is worse than 999 out of 1,000 people.
To
So
see.
that's important in understanding how he got to be such a damaged person. He wasn't just born and became the damaged person. It was a process that accumulated over years and years.
That's a good answer.
And it's
if
very
I
sad,
could rate.
but it does help to make sense of it, of someone who otherwise would seem just sort of a nasty, evil, just simply crazy person.
I'd like to turn you said out of
Wait,
a.
he just said
the 10
nasty.
Does he come to
evil.
life?
Most people to score 0
Or a
1.
flag?
You just told us that
Yes, a flag.
Brice unfortunately was at an
My
8.
mom.
Yes.
Can you walk us through specifically what those?
But she has a
statements are so everybody
body.
knows what it is that we're talking about?
So the first question deals with what we as outsiders would call.
Oh, I like his suit today.
Again, doesn't use that word abuse. It asks
That's
questions
the
like,
secret
when
reason.
you were going up to people, put you
He's
down,
got that
humiliate
secret
you,
satin
make you
pocket
feel
square
afraid you'd
or
be hurt.
silk.
Oh,
That was
that's
his first day
fancy.
suit.
I know.
He
Yeah,
came in
she
on
had
his
that on.
first day.
The reports are really
Mhm.
quite, chilling. The
Wow.
family
Mm.
members called him dumb.
Good looking man.
Quite the
They,
gangsta.
The gangster's little hanky.
on the right page.
Has his bandage fell
that-
off yet? No, it's
family member
permanently
used to
attached.
make him feel afraid that
I think it's covering up
family member
attachment
says
that's
Brice was curled
offensive.
up in a ball hiding from
No, it's
Where-
boils.
and saying he was scared to go. He was
Boils?
8 or 9 when this occurred. So there's a
Mm,
lot of instances of that,
boils.
just terror, being put down, being maligned, being degraded. So that then on the ACEs, that's question number 1. Question number 2 has to do with being physically attacked. Again, we would say being physically abused, but doesn't ask were you abused. It simply says, were you hit, left marks, were you beaten, these kinds of things. And the
Crime
information
Spies, do you
indicated
want to
that,
put your
he was beaten with a belt.
your link into private chat?
He he would climb out of a tree to get on the roof of the house to escape.
For,
He was beaten intentionally, repeatedly. And
for
research is very clear that kids who
my,
are beaten like this,
Your channel.
it's a risk factor for later problems with
Oh.
aggression
yes,
and self-concept and
Um,
self-esteem and all the good things we'd like
hold
kids to
on.
have. The third question deals with being sexually abused. Now, at least he didn't have that reported. So that's one of the two that he didn't have. The fourth question deals with asking, did you feel nobody loved you or thought you were special? Did anybody
Aw.
your family protect you?
Nobody
And
loved
he would call
you.
it emotional
Oh,
neglect.
nobody
And
loves
the
him.
reports all say that he felt unprotected,
Sad
not accepted
face.
growing up. He wasn't
It's a
loved by
sad
these
thing.
parent figures who would, for example, take the other children out and not take him with them. So he would discriminate against him.
He gave him a turkey baster.
He was crying.
There was an objection.
Now that's sad.
Oh,
Coming
Jesus,
from a turkey
Jessica.
baster is very sad.
Or TB. Sorry, that was a Mark Jensen reference.
Hmm.
Good Lord.
Oh, for crying out, Pete.
You can't use this as SAD's argument. You're trying to humanize him too much. There's Breonna Tarth. Colonel Sanders looks pissed. Oh, thank you, Crime Spies. Did she leave?
Who?
Crime Spies?
Oh, she might have dropped off for a second. She'll be back.
Okay. There she
There
is.
she is.
I was trying to sign in so I could never
I was trying
mind.
to exactly
Doesn't
where we were.
matter.
I think you were talking about ACEs factor number 4.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, okay.
So the fourth one we would call being emotionally neglected, but it deals with feeling unprotected, unloved, no one thought you were special, all these things that eat away at the self-esteem of a child. And again, the reports from numerous people who observed his childhood, saying nobody protected him, he felt unprotected and unloved. So I think it's fair to make that a yes. It's worth noting that one of the themes in here is being rejected by key parental figures. It's one of the few sort of universals in child development is that kids who feel rejected by their parents, that's a big risk factor. I mean, I said, smoking accounts for about 14% of the differences in lung cancer. International research done in 118 countries finds that parental rejection accounts for about 25% of bad outcomes by itself. So it's almost like the worst thing that can happen to a kid is to feel his parents reject him. They don't accept him. And he seems to have experienced that. The fifth item is physical neglect, which is probably, again, it doesn't use the word neglect. It happens particularly when parents have substance abuse or mental health problems and they can't take care of their children, they can't protect them. The question asks about things like, if you were sick, would somebody take you to the doctor? So that's neglect, and that seems to be evident. The sixth question has to do with parental separation or divorce. I said before, 2/3 of Americans get a score of 0 or 1. If they get a score of 1,
Thank you, Jessica B.
Thank you.
Divorced. And my kid got a score of 1 based on that. Their mother and I divorced when they were kids. Because this, again, is a challenge to kids.
Well, it
So
might be
that's
irrelevant.
disruption in a child's life.
However,
And so,
I found it a bit
and
interesting yesterday when the stepmother was
number 7,
talking.
witnessing domestic
Yeah.
violence. Again, doesn't say domestic violence. It says was your mother or stepmother hit, punched, bitten, knocked down, all the things that make up domestic violence.
Because
It
it was
was
just
Alone is shown to be
it was interesting to
very
speculate
difficult
as to
life.
what he
And
could have
that
turned
was very
out to
clear
be
from
if
the
he had have gone with the stepmother or the dad.
Yeah. What were we going to say, Crime
But-
Spies?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Sorry.
No worries.
Because his brother turned out so different.
Follow up on
Yeah.
what you
That's all.
said.
But it's
can you
still
give the jury,
irrelevant.
some understanding of the sort of things that caused you to find factor 7.
Well, in the reports, there was a report that Brice witnessed a parent figure cut, I guess, his mother's hair off, drag her by the hair, smash her face. And he reports remembering there's nothing he could do about it. That's very common. Boys particularly feel like they should be able to protect their mothers, but when they can't, it's often particularly disturbing. And when they get older, they often get in this protective role. So in many states, allowing your child to witness domestic violence is itself considered neglect, that you're supposed to protect your child from that. And clearly he was not protected from that, and it happened. The eighth question has to do with living with somebody in your household who's a substance abuser,
Agreed,
alcoholic,
Bobby.
drug addict, whatever it is. And the reports from the interviews is that his mother was a drinker, that the stepfather person was into the drug scene, so clearly had that. The ninth issue is living with mental health problems or suicide in the family. That we gave a no to because there wasn't an explicit report of that. But given everything else, it's probably would be surprising if the people in the household didn't have mental health problems, given everything else that was there. But to be conservative, we said no to that. And then the 10th question has to do with a family member going to prison. And here his stepfather figure went to prison. So that's how we got to a score of 8. And it's a very sad litany. You know, when I was a professor at Loyola University in Chicago, one of the things I did was to found
Hi,
the University
Stray.
for the Human Rights of Children, in part because these are all things that we would hope children have a right not to experience. And when you pile on this much, it's a bit like each yes answer is like handing the kid a rock and telling him to carry it around in his backpack. And you carry one rock, all right, it's a rock, but you're carrying 8 rocks around. It's not surprising the kids stagger under the weight of this. You're carrying his weight around. And often they don't realize that it's not normal to have that weight. I often will ask guys, I didn't get a chance to do that here, but of 100 guys you knew growing up, how many had 8 or more risk factors?
Well, we know he had an extra chromosome at
And I'll say,
least.
what about if we gave this to 100 guys at random in the whole population? How many do you think in general would have this? And they might often say 50 out of 100. When I tell them it's 1 out of 1,000, they're often shaken and stunned. I remember one guy in Chicago who said, imagine you're sort of stereotype of a gangbanger, a really tough gangbanger kind of guy. I've forgotten if he was Crips or Bloods or something. His score was 10. And this tough guy, when I explained to him what that meant, he started to cry. I mean, I always carry tissues around when I go into a jail or prison for that reason. Nobody had ever explained to him he was carrying his weight on his shoulders all the time. It's not surprising.
Where's the violin music?
Is that for most people, it's possible to recover from this, but basically one of the things it means is taking that backpack off, taking out the rocks one by one and finding some way to deal with it or make your peace with it so you can walk upright without being weighed down by that.
And Doctor, okay. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to ask some follow-up questions. And one was, you gave the answer no to people with mental health problems in the household. Given what you do know about the family members and the history of schizophrenia, could you have found yes for that?
Well, the question has somebody in your household, and it wasn't clear there was somebody in the household. There were people around him.
I don't have
but given
sad
other
music
things, it's
here.
surprising if these family members
Yeah.
were given a clinical assessment.
It's you're on your channel.
I know.
But again, trying to be conservative about this and saying no to that one.
Well, if you have sad music over on her channel.
I know, but our
again, trying to be conservative and not over.
audio is different and string art on our channels.
Well, you're on your own computer. Just upload it.
That he scored 8
I
out of
don't know.
Yeah,
I have it handy.
which is 1 in 1,000 people have that kind of score. So, I started using this because, sometimes people would say, well, lots of people had difficult childhoods and they didn't kill anybody.
Boom
One
up.
way to say this isn't some
That's what
generic
we
difficult
said.
childhood. And I had a difficult mother. I had some things. My parents were separated for a while. But this is a whole other league. This is
Check
the
Stray
incredible
out.
rate
She's
of this,
just
adversity, which
on it.
1 in 1,000 kids.
Oh my goodness, thank you,
Now,
Stray.
you were just telling us
Thank you,
that,
Stray.
that it's
What did I
difficult
tell you?
for
She's
for-
goddamn
You're
awesome.
awesome.
to deal with these things. What
I don't
how are you able to tell?
expect anything ever, but I do appreciate
No,
anything you can.
none of us expect anything
Well,
from
within research, there's
anybody,
a term
but
called
like
resilience.
when someone like Stray comes
It means the
along,
ability to
she's
overcome
just
adversity. There's a sense in which
incredible.
human
She
race is
deserves
alive
all the
to
love.
resilience, because think back to the caveman days. Your
Oh, that
daughter
Rockville
was taken by a
podcast, I fell
saber-toothed
asleep
tiger,
last night
whatever it is.
again.
If people just gave up,
Not because it was so good, I
generically,
was just
it
tired
wouldn't
and
be here today.
old.
So there is a thing called resilience, but there is research on what are the foundations for resilience.
Okay, this guy
One
is
of the
driving me
foundations
nuts.
for
Can we move on?
resilience is at least an average level of intellectual ability, and that makes sense because
Does anyone
saying,
in
who's more
chat
likely to
care
have
Yeah.
if we just
problems,
skip
somebody with
him?
one hand tied behind his back, or somebody with both hands free? And
I don't know,
having
it
this
makes me
average intellectual ability
nauseous.
is like having both
They're
hands
trying to
free.
make an excuse for a
Brice's
serial
case-
killer.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're okay with
IQ
skipping this
scores
crime?
for him.
If
Yeah.
if
The
anyone
brain
has
all
any
within the low end, some of them
objections,
very low.
speak up now.
And one of the experts
Or forever hold your
he
peace.
was
Yeah,
trying to make himself look
I
worse.
want to skip him.
There are low scores going back to when he was 10, when he was a teenager, before you could expect that he was deliberately trying to sabotage an IQ test. And they're
Speed
pretty
through
low.
him.
They're-
We're already
there's a
speeding
very
through
famous
him at
study by a guy named
1.52.
Alan that looked at this idea of risk accumulation in relation to IQ scores. And they looked at 8 different risk factors: low educational attainment in a parent, rigid and punitive. sort of
Oh, is he
abusive
almost done
parenting,
anyway?
A whole bunch of them.
I think
Now,
so.
If you had none of these risk factors, the average IQ scores were 119.
Yeah, a few minutes
100 is
more.
average, but that's average for the
15,
whole
maybe
population.
less.
The people without any of these risk factors
15 minutes of
are going to be
him.
very smart. That's the average. Some are smarter, some aren't as
Put him
smart.
at max
There's 4
speed.
risk factors,
Let's
the
just hear him
average
go
is
at
100, and that's
I
the
do
goal.
that
Do
all
you
the
want to hear him
time.
go at two
Like
times
105
speed?
risk factors, the average was 85. Which is
That could be
significantly
funny.
below average.
1.75.
Behind your back. So that's certainly one of them. Another one is having somebody who is sort of
Hey,
crazy
little
about
pill.
you're really special.
Hi,
Another one is
little
having
Hey, little
pill.
pill.
talent or ability.
And I want to jump in
Sorry.
just make sure that what you're talking about now is clear. You're talking about things
Yada,
that would make
yada,
someone-
yada.
Yes, and indicate that someone might be able to overcome or deal with their trauma, right?
Yes.
And you said the first one
Exactly,
was
Justin.
low intellectual function.
That's the first risk. I mentioned there were 8 of these factors in that study, and Brice had all 8. It would be surprising. The second one is that he's one person going to try to.
Okay.
We don't take it
I know that
seriously.
I can see Benny Hill's like smiling
child's drawings on the
face,
refrigerator.
you know,
Yeah.
goofy.
To an outsider, that looks like scribbles, but the parent says, this is my kid's drawing, and kids know that they are special. I mean, my Italian grandfather was very
Oh,
good at
you're
reading his arms,
special.
and that's always stuck with me. That my Italian grandfather really thought I was special. So having at least somebody in that role is really important.
The defendant is also special.
Right
Very
now, we have
special.
mother expresses love and
That's
concern
why
for
you
him.
were
Gonna be
sad.
treated special in prison. Tell you
His
what.
attorney called him a
It's
tard.
hard to see how that demonstrating some special talent and ability. Some kids at
Wasn't there
sports,
another
music,
trial
art.
yesterday we watched where there was
Remember
that
visiting a
that
really
word was
dysfunctional
thrown
family on
around?
Bronx in New York City.
Oh, was there?
One girl who was doing okay. She was a track star
What
in
was
this
it?
chaotic, dirty apartment. There was one corner with her track trophies and stuff, and that that was a special thing that she
It
had.
was a
Short
WebEx
bus
one.
special.
Another thing that contributes is educational developments. Good education. And
I
to get
love that
older,
term,
reading,
short
writing,
bus.
thinking. This is one of the resources for overcoming adversity.
Did he have that?
No, he seemed to have difficulty with that. I think there's a lot of school failure. Didn't go that far in school.
Oh yes,
All
blame
kinds
the
of problems in
schools.
school. So I think he didn't really have that growing up. Supportive community. People rally around you. Sometimes it's older mentors or clergymen or whoever it is, other people. Brice doesn't seem to have that, and in his case, it seems to be compounded by this paranoia that he expresses of distrust of people, and it's very hard for people to support somebody if they distrust people generally and push them away. And the last
Oh,
one
I'm not
which
offended.
I've
I
gone
just,
to is
I find it
positive
funny.
approach to life. People who just have a sort of, sometimes people use the word spunky. They just have a positive view of life and they can overcome stuff. A term that's used in the field is hardiness. And that
Thank you, though.
somebody who has this positive view that they can manage things and so on. So you put these things together and they're sort of foundations for resilience growing up, but they're also foundations for resilience in rehabilitation later on in adulthood. And in adulthood, sometimes you can compensate for things that you didn't have in childhood, which is why people do sometimes get better as they age to overcome adversity and trauma.
So you've indicated that
Some
based
do.
on
He didn't.
those you examined
Yeah.
and your expertise that he scored very high on the ACEs.
Yes.
And I think you just told us that also he scored unfortunately very low on his resilience.
That'd be my conclusion, yes.
Can you tell us the effect that had on someone as they go through?
You can't wait for me.
Well, I think the effect depends in part on where you grow up, what the rest of your environment is like. Let me give you an example of that. If by age 10, a kid is showing a chronic problem of aggression, bad behavior, acting out, violating the rights of others, if they see a psychologist, they might diagnose them with something that's called conduct disorder. It's a fancy label, but it just means that you observed a pattern of aggression, bad behavior, acting out, violating the rights of others. These are the
Okay,
kids
so
who
all
are
teenagers go
getting
through
sexual
that
principle, they're being
Yeah,
held
that's a
in school,
rebellious
they get juvenile
stage. Would you
delinquency.
like me to
We know
entertain
that
you with
at that
stories of
point,
the triplets when they were
on
15?
average, about 30% of those kids will end up
I
with
was like
seriously
half
violent
Columbo.
behavior, 3%. But nobody lives on average. Everybody lives somewhere. So search finds if you live.
One more thing. I love Columbo.
Oh my God. I love Peter Falk.
I know,
Died.
he's
I
so
was
great.
so upset.
I know.
And Matlock. And
Yeah.
Rockford Files.
Those are awesome.
And Monk.
Monk is great.
And yeah. Oh my God, I've watched Rockford Files over and over. And Columbo. Over
Yeah,
and over.
should
It's
watch
a
it.
positive, supportive neighborhood.
Well, his
No crime or low
OKG
crime and
853,
a lot of positive role models and all of that. It's not
that's
30%, but
that
15%
stood for
of those
his
kids who have
license
serious
plate on his
who
Firebird.
have that problem at age 10. If you live in a
OKG
dysfunctional neighborhood
853, I
with
think it
crime and
was.
violence and
It
bad negative role
Oklahoma
models, it's
Garner,
not 30%, but
James
60%.
Garner.
So the odds
And
that the
then
same kid would end up
853
having
is when he
serious
got
violent delinquency is 4 times greater
discharged
in
from
one neighborhood than they
Korea,
are in another.
the war in
So always
Korea.
have to look at the
Oh,
sort of
nice.
context of any of these individual things.
I know Rockford Files
I'll give you
trivia.
just one more example, if I may, about that.
That would be
I
kind of
mentioned
fun.
schizophrenia before. About half of the people who get diagnosed with schizophrenia hear voices. The technical term is auditory hallucination. People generally haven't studied what the voices say because the voices in people's heads.
I do have
Some anthropologists
triplets.
did.
They're 17
Wow.
now.
Looked
They're
at people who hear
seniors.
voices in 3 different cultures:
Yikes.
in the United States, in India, and in Ghana, which is in Northwest Africa. And what they found is amazing. Again, these are schizophrenics who we think of being crazy and disconnected from reality. In the United States,
Where they
70%
Ghana?
of the voices
Are you Ghana?
schizophrenics were telling them to commit acts
Oh
of
my
violence against
Ghana.
themselves or others. 70%. In India, it was only 20%. In India, most of the voices are telling them to do things like clean house,
Ghana.
which is annoying but not dangerous. And in Ghana, it was only 10% of the voices urged violence. In Ghana, the voices are mostly thought to be positive conversations with God. So I mention it because the society you live in can have an effect on how your trouble expresses itself. Schizophrenics, 70% of the voices here, tell them to hurt people, themselves or others. In India, it's only 20%. In Ghana, it's only 10%. So being a schizophrenic here is more dangerous than it is being a schizophrenic in India or Ghana.
Okay,
So
sir,
the
could you,
context is always important. And I think in the case of Brice,
your
the
sword?
context was working against him to make things even worse. So it gets less and less surprising.
Being a
at the time.
schizophrenic
So
there
I wanna
is
turn,
more dangerous than in
to now
India or
in the
Ghana.
future. This jury has found Brice guilty.
Objection
So Who are we
relevancy.
going to sentence him? That's what we're here for.
I can see that. There's more guns in the
One of the
US.
things that is important for them to understand is whether there
So
is hope for
lousy.
Brice in the future. Can you explain
Bob's
your
the
expertise and your conclusions, Brice's path to improvement in the future?
Well, obviously it looks pretty bleak right now, that's for sure.
Copy,
But
it's
there
fine.
is, research shows that development can turn into a positive direction in adulthood. There's a very famous book called The Brain That Changes Itself. It's research
I thought
about
you
how
said
the
it was
human
just a
brain
few
in
minutes.
adulthood can change in response to changed experiences. And each chapter deals with, one chapter deals with having a stroke and how certain experiences can help your brain repair. On the negative side, there's a chapter dealing with pornography, that watching pornography can affect the way your brain deals with sexual stimulation.
Yeah, you do.
We do.
Absolutely. Have far more guns than we have people.
We have half the guns in the world. And
Yeah.
we probably have almost all of them if it wasn't for that little incident in Afghanistan recently.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where they left all our brand new stuff.
Yeah, well, but
Newest
apparently that didn't happen.
technology. Apparently.
The other day, yeah, Blinken said that didn't happen.
No. Well, we
Oh
we
yes.
burnt all our
Anthony
guns.
Blinken, isn't he just a treat?
Oh, yeah. Well, that would have been a good idea if you didn't want to ship it back in Afghanistan. At least destroy the stuff. But no.
Oh, well, we had this thing called a gun buyback. So what happened was there was a big massacre, and then our prime minister said, how about we do this? We all pool our money together to buy all the guns from all the people, and then we put them all and we incinerate them all.
You think
And
that would work
everyone
here?
No, no, I don't think so. No.
Our
How
culture
can,
is
you
Um,
buy back
entitled.
how can you buy back firearms that you never sold them to begin with?
No, the people who owned the guns went, okay, and
We'll
they
give 'em
received
up.
some money. Yeah, they gave them up.
Voluntarily.
And no, they actually voluntarily. They gave them up, and we bought them back, and then we put them all in a big fire. Gone.
How'd that
And
work for you?
then,
I
great.
mean, for them, it
We
worked.
haven't had a massacre since that was in 1996.
I mean, there's a lot
Dan
of reasons.
Bongino writes about that in one of his books. I can't remember which one.
Does he?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, so
yeah,
that was an
it works for
unaliving of 33 people. It works in a country where we're not like culturally attached to owning firearms,
Yeah.
because we're not here. So it's
I
a
mean-
very, very different.
Yeah, it goes back to how we were founded, and
It's a yeah. You guys have like a background that
Yeah.
like it's instilled in the way you're brought up, that you have this right to bear arms, where for us it's just a thing.
Yeah.
A firearm is just an object. It's
Well,
not
I
like
tell you,
part
the
of
people
your
in Minneapolis, the police half the time don't show up, so you're kind of stuck
Yeah.
by yourself
Yeah.
defending your home.
there's
yeah.
well, yeah, we can. It is in our DNA. I mean, we can talk about this for hours, but
We can,
I
and
know.
let's not.
yeah,
Well, the good news is that in a positive, supportive, therapeutic environment, even damaged people can get better. There's a form of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy.
that is true, Bobby. That's so fun. People make zip guns. They go to like Home
Oh, yeah.
Depot and get like some steel rods and stuff. And you stick a bullet in and just like make a really quick gun that's like $5-10, and then they sell them for like 50 or 100.
Really?
And they bring like
Wow.
50 to 100 of them, and then it's gone to the point where they ban those. You can't trade them in anymore. But people make
Wow.
thousands of dollars doing that.
Wow.
It tries to change the way people think, and that can be very successful.
Because they don't have
If you get
guns.
it can change the way you think, which can change the way your brain works, which can change your behavior. There's also
We
the
did
issue
have
of
shootings
ensuring
before,
that,
Mads, not to
people
the
reach
scale of
full
that last one.
years of prison at
That was
40.
a big one.
That itself can put them in a lower category for problem.
Okay,
it's
so
quite
some of you in
remarkable.
the
A lot of
chat,
cases
you
that
should
work out
join me on one of our Rumble
Yeah.
subcommittee hearings.
Also, something people do is 3D print guns and then
Yeah.
sell them for a lot more.
Oh, shut
So-
up, Justin.
My friend
teenagers
Pete made
murdered.
Prince's 3D
They
urn.
do some terrible stuff.
Oh, really?
And in one case, the
Mhm.
judge said in sentencing to a 15-year-old, there's no possibility of you ever reforming, and you're just a lost cause. And now 25 years later, that same individual has been going back for resentencing because not only did he rehabilitate, but he became a remarkable person. Now, that may be a rare case, but it does happen. And that's one reason why I think it's good to leave open the door for this kind of improvement, not to guarantee it, but to say at some point there should be.
You're right. We don't need guns
Right,
at
to see
all.
if he's as terrible in 20
We're
years. as
pretty
he was
tough around
when he
here.
did these terrible crimes, because it does happen. And sometimes it's almost miraculous that you look back and think, wow, I wouldn't have predicted this. The younger they are at the time of the crime, often the more the prospect is. The fact that
This
he
guy
was
is so full of
26, I think,
hooey.
at his time.
Did the
know, it's
Menendez
almost
brothers?
That's-
Did the Menendez brothers have a
Menendez
witness like
usually
this?
presumed mature
no?
brain until about age 25.
Probably.
We
Well,
have 18 as a marker, but the science says
Oh, no.
18 is not a scientific cutoff point. Just a couple of years ago, the American Psychological Association looked at the evidence again and said, for example, that
So
scientifically
amazing.
you shouldn't have a death penalty until at least 21. And other researchers have said you should push that to a higher level. So in a sense, that's good news. Being relatively young means he's still immature. And the research also shows that the more adversity you have, the more it slows down the process of brain maturation. So at 26, he still may have been immature, and he may, as he matures, develop resources that we can't see right now that would improve his ability to be a safe member of the community. No guarantees. In fact, if you had to bet, if I had
You
to bet
scared
my
of
firstborn
emu?
child on this,
No,
I'd
not scared of
offer up
emu.
my son and say, oh yeah, this guy's going to be okay.
No.
But I think we need to leave the door open. Based
You
on
scratch
this.
emu's face off.
Thank you, Doctor. I don't have any
Face
further
off.
questions. Stay there. Prosecutor.
I don't know. I have a difficult decision
Right on.
with
Good.
people like this guy,
As you said, you did not interview the defendant, correct?
or a
That's correct.
difficult
You reviewed
time
interviews of his family members?
Yeah.
And other sources about him. Yeah, so this
giving.
is
I
all
just
any
decided
kind
to
of
speed it up to
snap.
1.5.
The mitigation specialists, particularly.
It's almost over.
For 30 years, have shown themselves to be very
Please.
reliable information gatherers.
Did
It's
you
crossed
listen
now,
to the
so
interviews? And did you listen to the interviews or did you read a summary of the interviews?
Yes,
I think I read
Zachariah.
summaries or
Cassowaries
looked at
are
transcripts of many
something
summaries.
to be wary
Did
of.
the information come predominantly from his stepmother and his brother?
I think, if I recall correctly, those were two sources, but there are others as well. I'm sure that the defense could provide a list of all of them, but it's not. I think it's not just from a couple of sources.
Oh, yeah.
So, but you had to rely on what was provided. You didn't get to do follow-up questions to further analyze your 10 factors.
No, I think this was the information seemed pretty clear, particularly with respect to responding to the adverse childhood experience scale. So I felt pretty confident that this was solid information to go on. Ideally, I might have spent a couple of hours with him, but even then, I'd still rely
I
on a
know
large
what this
degree of
guy's
information
name
collected
is.
by others.
That's the next witness, Bobby.
I think that we are in possession of the same background interviews, but did you read an interview from Chandler James, his brother?
Well, I'm going to be a little hazy on the who and the what, but if it's in the packet, then I'll just stipulate it.
Okay, and do you remember there was a paternal grandmother, maternal uncle, paternal grandfather, another uncle, stepbrother, and stepmother? Does those sound familiar?
That sounds-
I'm not trying to place you on it. but,
Thank you.
Was the information about the emotional
Hey,
abuse
Daniel
mostly
D.
the stepmother's report of him not wanting to go back to his mom's house, curling up in a ball on that one occasion?
Well, I think that was a very salient, a very poignant example. We're talking about question number 1. I think there were other things around, other things that were other sources and other reports, but certainly that incident is a particularly vivid one. And as it says in my report, that I was reported by his stepmother, Anna, yes.
And the physical, I don't know if I don't think you characterize it as abuse, but physical treatment, you're basing that on his brother's report that their father disciplined them with a belt, correct?
I think that's one of the reports.
Okay.
Often brothers
Oh,
have
that sounds
they have the most
fantastic. I'll add
direct
it to the
access to some of these
calendar.
experiences.
Obviously. But you're basing this on what other people reported. Well, you're basing this on a summary of what other people reported to the mitigation specialists.
Yes, it's in most cases it
Christine.
comes directly from the individual, but then they
Bobby,
usually
you're
Why
kidding
you-
me.
how do we know they're telling
Hi,
the truth?
Christine.
I'd say in some ways this might even be more reliable than if we just had his reports on these things, because particularly in his case where a couple of the experts thought there was some malingering going on. We'd want to have
Oh,
collaboration.
malingering.
Him. It'd be nice to have it coming from him.
I
in
love
addition
that
to-
word.
But I think
Mhm.
the jury could be very confident that this is a pretty accurate picture
Of what the people said to the,
I was trying to explain malingering to someone here.
Probably what he experienced.
and the domestic
Because
violence in his mother's
It's
home,
kind of like, if you don't watch trials,
what we
malingering
know
is
that his stepfather was abusive to his mother, correct?
not really understood, is it?
Well, it's basically where you're trying to, like, if you're being tested to see if you're insane, like you should be not guilty by insanity.
But
You're
yeah,
faking.
I mean,
You're not
you're
taking the
faking.
test serious. You're faking the symptoms. You're doing what you think the test taker wants to
once
hear
you
from
know.
you.
Yeah,
To
exactly.
get
So I
that
think most people who watch these know what the psychological term means, like malingering means faking, right?
Okay.
But yeah, however, okay, so I was talking to a friend here recently about malingering. Malingering, I don't know if it means the same in your country, but here it kind of means that you're hanging about, like kind of being a bit sus.
And
Yeah.
besides the belt discipline, there doesn't seem to be any
Yeah.
allegations of abuse.
Being a bit of a sort of
I don't recall that.
like a trespasser, kind of
And it
like malingering around the outskirts of someone's house, being a malingerer.
people did demonstrate love and affection for him. His stepmother certainly.
A malingeroo? Yeah,
I think that's possible. That's one
you're a bit of a
competent
malingeroo.
element of his experience, but
You're a bit
Um,
sus. You
one
know
way
what
to think
sus
about
is,
it,
don't you?
if somebody punches you in the face, the fact that somebody else doesn't punch you in the face, that's good.
Shady.
but it doesn't
Yeah,
translate
you're a bit
to
of a
the fact that you punch
shady
you.
malingerer.
In,
Yeah, I know
in
that's
your
lingering,
studies of
but we
criminal
call it
behavior, is
malingering.
the case that some types of crimes,
Well,
have
according
a
to
strong correlation
Dr. Google
with,
here or whatever,
well, let me give an
the
example.
legal
Loitering.
term
When you look at
legal
people who
term
obviously-
is used to describe the action of exaggerating or falsifying one's illness or injury to gain some benefit. In military law, malingering refers to pretending to be ill or deliberately injuring oneself to render oneself unfit for service
Interesting.
or delay return to service.
Oh yeah, the whole like shoot yourself in the foot to get out of Vietnam.
Malingering is considered a crime and is punishable as a court-martial may direct. Eek.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Little
about
Colin,
admiralty
maybe a
law?
local thing around here.
See, we expand our craniums every single time we get together, don't we?
Is that the same verdict or same definition for admiralty law? You're a sovereign citizen?
I do not know.
I'm kidding. I know. Do you know what sovereign citizens are?
Sovereign citizens.
Like Daryl Brooks. Did you watch that?
I did not. I couldn't watch it. My
Oh.
son was in marching band for 4
People
years.
who think that they're above like the local law.
Like they
So-
aren't, don't have to follow the or follow the laws of the
yeah, they
Constitution.
have their own
Yeah,
Whole thing, yeah. So like
Yeah.
it's this whole
anti-government tax protesters, financial scammers,
Yeah,
and
but
conspiracy
Bill-
theorists.
yeah.
like it's built on a specific thing that's nonsense, but like they have this whole idea of what it is.
Yeah.
And
But then
admiralty
they're
law,
happy to have rights.
Kind of like,
Yeah.
kind of like,
Generally.
like Ruby Hill people, maybe. I don't know. No,
similar, I think.
Hey, Nikki. Yeah, morons is what they are.
This case. When
Yeah,
you look at people who are
correct.
sexually abusing children, do you often find that they were sexually abused as children?
Yeah, I believe it's identified as a risk factor for later sexual abuse, and of course,
Can I say the
with
word
everything sexual,
pull?
it's often in
Pull.
another category. So if the offense is sexual,
Pull.
it often opens up a lot of other issues about rehabilitation.
And isn't it the case? that
And
high
yeah,
correlation-
we do actually add
Okay.
to a word sometimes.
Oh, I tell you what, there's nothing more enjoyable than reading the chat.
The chat
I
is
know it's so much fun.
People are so
Sweet.
fantastic.
Want to come up in case you need to leave?
based and hard piled. So much at a TV. You're right. I love sovereign citizens too.
Ooh, oh,
Great fun. Ooh.
oh, I gotta slow this down.
Carpet.
0.75.
Carpet.
Ooh, ooh. Oh, I'm waiting for the red shoe person.
Oh, the red shoe person. There's
Oh,
music.
Ooh, those are nice shoes. Ooh, boots, nice.
Actually, I downloaded something similar to this right when I first started my channel, and then there's a lady that says, on occasion, somebody's coming.
Oh, is that a trench coat?
like 70s
Yeah,
detective. Yeah.
it's literally called 70s porn music.
that person has a lot
Really?
of keys.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Everybody can be seated.
I use
Oh,
that.
where's the red shoes?
I use that theme whenever
Our
there's like
next witness is going to be testifying.
a
via
joke
Zoom.
something
Yeah,
That's
sexual.
so
Are you ready
funny.
for your next
I gotta get
witness?
better about using sounds. All I have
too.
is my screaming goat.
All right, and your next
I
witness
feel
is-
completely gypped. Okay, get ready to turn it down a bit. Jessica B says it's going to be really loud.
Raise
Oh,
your
yeah.
right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and the whole truth?
Thank you, Jessica.
Chat.
Thank you, Dr. Mr. Griffiths.
Shut your mouth.
Dr. James, if you have any difficulty hearing me, just let me know, okay?
Okay.
Wow. I turned it down by
Can you
half.
identify yourself for the record?
Sure. So my name is Joette James. I am
Could you spell that, please?
psychologist and also a board certified clinical neuropsychologist.
Oh, I think
right.
Bobby might have
And can you walk us
Might have
through your
watched
education?
us earlier.
Sure. I received my PhD
No.
in clinical psychology in 2003 after completing
God, woman.
an internship in clinical psychology.
Jesus Christ. I turned it down by like 60%. Thank you for the warning.
Spielhammer. He could probably fix it. He's a magician.
I know.
Bring it back. Bring it back. I can't hear it now.
I'm scared.
Northwestern
I'm frightened.
University, medical
You
school.
turned it right
Hold
down.
my hand.
Since that time, I have once I completed my PhD, I also became board certified in neuropsychology and clinical neuropsychology through the American Board of Professional Psychology, and that was 10 years ago in 2013.
Oh, hey, you know how everybody gives me crap about accidentally shutting down Dave's stream the other day, or like 2 weeks ago?
You're going to tell everyone now, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Ian Runkle of the Bailey did the exact same thing last night.
That was his stream. It was not someone else's.
No, that was Hoag's stream. Ian ended it.
Okay. He's always
I
running
love
Hoag's
him.
stream.
I have a secret crush on him.
Yeah, well, Ian left his stream for the night and
Oh.
accidentally ended the stream.
Oh no! On
When it was still going.
whose channel?
Hoaglaw's stream was ended by Ian by accident.
Oh no! Oops.
So I feel a lot better about myself now because I did the same thing to David.
I've done that before, where I've gone to like I don't
Yeah,
know, every mistake in the book. This person
just
here
a-
has made it.
it's just a million times worse when it's.
And now you just have to call out everybody else who does it
Absolutely,
publicly.
because it was a humiliating moment for me, and I need to share in the misery.
This is fantastic
Oh,
of you.
no.
Aren't you just lovely? What's the Rama Rama song? I don't know what this is. No, I haven't heard it. Clearly.
Rama Rama.
This.
It's not
Oh,
that.
isn't that a kazoo?
My area of specialty as
A
a
kazoo? I think we have some of those around here.
And now I can't hear her.
Shall I find it?
Background has been in developmental disorders. As a neuropsychologist, we tend to focus in two areas. One is conditions, neurological conditions, which begin early in development or
He did.
prenatally. So that
He
would
felt so
include
bad.
things like
I did.
attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, learning disabilities, and intellectual disability, which we used to refer to as mental retardation.
There you go,
Yay,
Bobby.
That neuropsychologists will often deal with are what we call acquired injuries to the brain. This would include things that like severe head injuries, as you would see in a car accident, brain tumors, strokes, seizure disorders.
His
We
head
say
is
acquired
awful
because these are
misshapen.
conditions that that happen afterwards, right after someone, and can happen at any time during the lifespan. So it can happen; those can happen in childhood. They can happen in adolescence or adulthood. I tend to focus on developmental disorders, that first group. Although will occasionally see someone, for example, that had a stroke or some kind of other condition that affected the brain later in life.
And you're testifying today as an expert witness. You've testified as an expert witness before?
Many times, probably at least 50 times.
All right. Can you tell the jury what the purpose was of your role in this case?
Sure. So I was asked to make a determination as to whether Mr. Rhodes met criteria for an intellectual disability. As I said, that is a disorder or diagnosis that we used to call mental retardation, intellectual disability.
Can you explain to the jury, and it may be self-evident, but I think it's good to make sure, what an intellectual disability is?
Sure. So,
Sure, I'd be happy to tell you if he's a retard.
A neurological condition, and it can happen through. I mean, most often it is. So it's a developmental disorder. So again, part of that group that I said shows itself in early childhood. Intellectual disability can have many causes. It can be genetic.
I need to see this.
Actually, from psychosocial conditions, poverty. It can result from lots of different conditions. It has many what we call causes or etiologies, but it is a lifelong condition, and it begins in development at some point in that what we call developmental period, which is sort of broad now because we know that there isn't a fine bright line where all of a sudden you become an adult, but generally within the first 20 years of life, you're gonna notice this problem.
Yeah,
And
little pill.
it really speaks to delays in multiple areas of functioning, delays in language and communication skills, delays in academic skills, delays in social skills.
This was
delays
this
in
morning.
one's emotions and emotional control. And the formal criteria for intellectual disability actually comes from two places. One, we have the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. That's now in its 5th edition, text revision. So its short form is called the DSM-5 and that's kind of like the psychologists and psychiatrists our Bible of diagnoses. And then for mental retardation or intellectual disability, there's actually another source of information for that, and that's the American Association of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, the AAIDD. And both of those sources define what ID is.
That's exactly where I was going to go. So in order to determine that someone is intellectually disabled, you look to the scientific basis, and they lay out the test, right?
Right. So both of those sources, the DSM-5, the Bible for psychiatry and psychology, and the AAIDD, they both have manuals that have the definition, the clinician's definition for ID, the scientific definition. And that is, number one, the person has to have an IQ that is significantly deficient. So when we talk about IQ,
Significantly deficient.
That's the way that we measure intellectual functioning.
I found the Rama thing.
Through
Oh, did you now? I
Yeah.
think we get struck.
I'll just play for a few seconds.
Okay.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh
And
no.
create a song. That's
Okay,
actually
okay.
super sad.
A bit of context. Oh no.
They took
so bad.
this is your brain and the frying pan and the egg from the 70s. They took that and
Oh,
expanded on
no.
it, I think.
Is this really racist? You?
It's pretty racist.
Okay.
So-
I had no idea. Sorry.
It's pretty bad. So yeah, it is. So basically in our country, our First Nations people, so our Indigenous people, have a little bit of a problem. It's quite well known for sniffing the fumes of the petrol. So
Seriously?
the gas. Yeah.
That's a stereotype.
They
Yeah.
used to have
It's
scratch
not
and
just a
sniff
stereotype,
stickers
it's
in
a
the
real thing.
70s that were gasoline smelled.
yeah.
Do you remember
So
that?
Yeah.
Who out there
so,
grew
yeah,
up in the 70s and remember collecting stickers in your scratch and sniff book? And there was a whole page on like oil, motor oil, gasoline,
Wow.
vomit
Yeah.
stickers.
So this is like it actually is a real thing. Like they go and sniff the petrol and get high that way.
Want to get
And
high?
yeah. And what's this little pill? Oh, thank you. Yeah. Look, I was trying to find me some dash cam videos. Yeah. So
That's fine.
it's a
Check
big,
private chat real quick.
Okay, just a moment.
it's actually a really big problem, and especially among the young ones, because they have no money and they're really bored because they're out in the regional areas, and also there are some dry communities. So what our government does is, in order to stop the alcohol problems, they create these communities where it's actually illegal to have any alcohol whatsoever, and it can really help. The dry communities can really help, but instead what they do is they go and they sniff the alcohol, not alcohol, the fumes of the petrol in order to get high, and it's really dangerous. They can they really ruin their brain cells, especially the young kids. And so yeah, that's a parody, I suppose, ad for this is your brain on meth, this is your brain on petrol. That's quite catchy.
Yeah.
I will watch it when we're not in a
Yes,
situation where you could get
like,
struck.
One's problem solving.
Thank you for
reasoning,
that.
Ability to learn from experience,
A little petrol problem.
thinking, judgment, etc. And that intelligence is represented by what we call an IQ test,
Must be the petrol,
intelligence quotient.
bro.
So you need to show significant deficits, typically in the range of
In the middle of
second percentile or so, which means that 98% of the population is just basically smarter than you are.
It's pretty
And
full
that's
on.
a score of approximately 70 to 75. It depends on the test. And then the second area, or what we call the second prong of intellectual
I don't know if
disability,
it's real or a
refers to
parody,
how someone is in their
Excoma.
day-to-day life. So you have to have a low score on the IQ test, but you also have to show in your day-to-day life in those areas I talked about before: communication and language and social skills,
White
your
out.
ability to take care of yourself, and your
Hey, Garcia.
ability to solve do things
Was
like how you are in your community,
Really?
accessing your community resources, your ability to control and regulate.
Clearly,
your
it's not
emotions,
aimed
your
at
work
like
skills, your
my
academic
area,
skills,
so
everyday
it's
kind
hard
of
to tell.
abilities. And then the third, what we
I'll
call
have to
prong
check it
of the
out.
definition, is that the problems
Hear
have
that.
to be evident in the developmental period. And that's because it's a disorder beginning in childhood. That will differentiate ID from something that starts later. Like, for example, you're 30 and then you have a brain tumor, and the brain tumor destroys part of your brain, and then now your IQ is really low. That's not an intellectual disability because it didn't start in the childhood period.
I want to go back to what you were calling the second prong and just make sure that it's clear. I don't know that you gave us what its title. What when we talk about deficit?
No, I did it. Sorry. It's called adaptive functioning. So the first prong is intellectual functioning, and the second
Each
prong
to
is
their
called
own,
adaptive
Sue.
functioning. My apologies.
No, you're fine. Let me take that adaptive functioning. I just want to make sure that it's clear. So intellectual functioning is something that IQ, right? And I think everybody's heard that term. I mean, people use that in common language. Adaptive functioning, on the other hand, is not something that people talk about and say. But I think you just described adaptive functioning as the ability to deal with everyday life and everyday life situations. Am I making it too simple?
No, that's absolutely true. Everyday life across lots of situations. So your communication, your social skills, your emotional regulation skills, your how you do in school, like your academics, your work, everything.
So if somebody has a significantly deficient IQ and they also have issues dealing with everyday life, and it manifests during the developmental period, meaning when they're younger, that person is potentially intellectually disabled.
Correct.
Okay.
It's what we used to call mental.
So, ma'am, can you
retardation,
please explain
but
where
now
we are
called
failing in
intellectual disability.
recognizing these traits? That's
In
the
order to make
thing.
that determination for Brice, what did you do or what did you examine?
I was provided with
This
a
is
number
why
of
school
records
choice is
associated,
actually
with
so
Brice. So
important.
school records, I looked at medical records, I looked at previous psychological evaluations that he had, and recordings, but summaries of adaptive functioning interviews that had been conducted with people who know him very well. So these would be relatives of his. And I also interviewed his mother and did what is called a formal assessment of adaptive functioning. It's a specific test. We have, as neuropsychologists, a few tests of adaptive functioning. The one that I used is called the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scales. And I asked his mom to actually focus on a particular period when Brice was 15 years old.
Ew.
Okay. And from, well, in addition, when you looked at those records, did you find any previous diagnosis of any conditions?
Yes, Brice was previously diagnosed with ADHD and with a bipolar disorder.
And what is ADHD?
So ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. It's a developmental disorder. So it's, again, one of those disorders that clinicians and lay people notice in the childhood period. It begins in the childhood period. I think a lot of people still use the term ADD, but that's kind of an outdated term. And with folks that have ADHD, they can have more problems with the attention part, which we call predominantly inattentive presentation. But the vast majority of people with ADHD are what we call combined presentation, which means that they have problems with focus and attention and listening and following instructions, but they also have problems with restlessness, impulsivity, kind of doing things before thinking. They often find themselves, as children, often are the kinds of kids that will just be not able to sit still or run across the street and someone has to grab them. They just have a lot of hyperactivity and restlessness. As an adult, what people describe is more of an internal restlessness, like they just feel jumpy and restless in their head, but you might not see that in their body. And a lot of people with ADHD have trouble with just regulating their skills, like regulating their emotions. They're kind of people who are too much or too little. They have kind of trouble maintaining that even keel, and that's true about their impulses too.
And you said bipolar disorder. Can you flesh that out for the jury?
Yeah, bipolar disorder is a mood disorder. It's what we call a mood disorder. And that can happen at any age. It's different from a developmental disorder like ADHD, meaning that we see it in childhood. Now, mood disorders run in families. So some of the most severe mood disorders actually do start in childhood. But a mood disorder can happen really at any time. It can happen even in reaction to something really bad happening in your life, especially if that reaction, like a depression or sadness, is even more than what we would expect or lasts longer than we would expect for the bad thing that happened. So like depression, bipolar disorder is a problem with regulation of mood. It's a little bit, as I said, with people with ADHD, they kind of have that problem anyway. But it's like much more challenging if you have a mood disorder, or you have periods where you might be quite.
Who has periods? I hope he doesn't have periods.
Positive.
I can have periods.
Sometimes for some people,
I can be a woman.
call grandiose, where they feel like they're super powerful and better than everyone else.
Sure, darling.
Oh
But
my God,
sometimes it just means that
I don't judge you.
have an elevated
Superpower.
mood and they feel good, or sometimes it can just mean that they're really irritable and touchy and they get kind of
You
Talk
irritable
about
and
me?
touchy?
set off and angry and irritable. And
Yeah,
then
that's
There's
me for
such
the
a
last year.
wide range of
I
what
mean,
she's
too,
discussing,
have
though.
periods of time when they're very sad
I
and
don't
they're
like
down
her.
and they don't feel good about themselves, and sometimes they can be so down that they contemplate suicide or even attempt suicide, but have a hard time getting out of bed, have a hard time doing things.
Well, they don't need to feel that bad.
Have trouble with getting started on things and kind of the will to do activities.
Oh,
that
I have
they
trouble
normally
getting
do
started on
when things
things.
go down. So
Doesn't mean I go around
like
stabby.
more extreme mood swings, and then you can have people that are just, as I said, more of this sort of.
Oh, I have extreme mood
all the
swings.
time kind of ruin
Yeah,
your
tell me about it.
And
Just kidding.
based on your
Shut up.
expertise and what you did and examined in this case, were you able to reach a conclusion regarding
Hey,
Brice's
Lefty.
intellectual
Hi,
disability?
Lefty.
Yes, from all of the information that I reviewed and the interview with his mother, it was my conclusion to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty
You're
that
such an
Brice
asshole.
met criteria for
Yeah.
a diagnosis of intellectual disability.
So I want to break down a little bit how you were able to reach.
I have to go get my
this
water. My
conclusion?
coffee is
No worries.
cold.
Okay, so can you explain a
So
little bit
just,
based
I'll be
on-
right
on
back.
what you
No
did,
problem.
what you saw, how you were able to reach this conclusion? What about the evidence?
Beware of them
So I
all.
reviewed multiple IQ tests. So remember, I had said earlier that
He did multiple IQ
stands
tests.
for
So you
intellectual
keep taking it
quotient,
again to
and
see if you do better.
getting at that first prong of difficulties or deficits with thinking and reasoning and problem solving and learning from experience. And so the best way to understand that is administering an individually administered test of what we call intelligence, of those concepts. And so Brice has had evaluations of his intelligence since June of 2001 when he was 10 years old, up until December of 2021 when he was 31 years old. So he's actually had 6 separate assessments of his intelligence.
How many
using
drinks do I
similar
have on my
measures.
desk at the
When he was
moment?
young,
Why?
the
Can you see
child
drinks?
version was used, and then when he was older, beyond the age of 16, the
Got a
adult
coffee?
measure was used. So I was able to
I
review
have a
those
big thing of
6
water.
separate administrations of
That's about
his
it.
IQ that I found in records and some through reports written by the doctors themselves. So that's that first prong. And then in addition to that, there were a lot of reports in the interviews done with family members that talked overall about some of those aspects of intelligence, like grasping concepts, being able to, for example, his maternal uncle talked about just difficulties with teaching Brice to.
Can you believe the cat is back?
Be able to get it. He talked about.
I
Brice
just
using
let him
his
out.
the wrong way when trying to learn how to speak, and so this gets at this idea of being able to understand broader concepts to learn, which is part of intelligence. Planning, and his paternal stepbrother talked about he would make a plan, but it would be not very well thought out. Part of intelligence is planning and organization.
You don't say.
Another relative talked about lack of awareness and insight. And so those are all broad concepts associated with intelligence, being able to kind of understand things, grasp concepts, plan, reason. So that's that first prong of intelligence.
I want to stop and ask you another question though about that first prong. Was there evidence that in what you looked at that there were times that Brice did not fully meet the effort expected in some of these tests?
Yes, there were in the
Do we know
evaluation
what
that
age he
done 10
was when
years
he
ago,
took these
in
tests
October
she's
by Dr.
describing?
Riley, and the evaluation
I'm
that
sorry?
was done more recently.
Do
2
we
years
know what
ago,
age he
by Dr.
was when he
Williams.
took these
Both
tests?
of those doctors did indicate
11, I think.
concerns about
2001, you would have been
Brice's
11.
testing.
Can you
I
explain
don't know. I
a little
mean,
bit to the jury
I have 4
about
children. They have
why,
varying
you were
degrees of
able
all
to reach
kinds of
about
things
it?
she's
Because
talking
granted,
about.
from
But that's
two
just
tests, you
kids.
told
Yeah.
us you looked at 6, but I'd like you to explain, if you could, the about the effort component.
Right. So, one of the things that we want to, when we want to
The
come to
cat
a conclusion
was trying to get me to
about
come
any
up the
data, we
hall
want
and
to be
give
sure
him
that
some
data
milk.
is valid, that data is telling us
Oh.
something that is truth.
That was very clever,
And so,
really.
When
One of my
someone
older
is-
ones
when there's
likes to stick
suspicion
her
that
paw
someone is
underneath the
putting forth their
door
best effort,
and shake it.
and that doesn't necessarily mean
So
that
you'll hear this like
they're not
rattle.
putting their best effort
Mine jumps up and just shakes the doorknob.
They are deliberately trying
Well,
to
Lily's
sometimes it can be that,
Lily's boyfriend
um,
wants a cat
but
just like
sometimes
yours,
people
Sal.
don't put
Oh,
forth
yeah.
their best effort
That's
because,
his
they're
dream
not
cat.
super invested in
I
the
want one like that
process,
too.
or, sometimes
They're awesome,
it's because they're
but-
really
She says he's
tired
done it
or
6
depressed,
different
or
times in
it's
his life up to
because
31.
they,
How many times do you need to do an
don't have
IQ
a good
test?
rapport,
Well, if you fail the
and
first one, you might
that's
want to do another.
something specifically we call stereotype
I
threat,
remember I
which can
took one
happen
to
when
try
the
to get
Bill?
my
examiner and the
Mensa.
person being tested are
Oh,
from
really?
When I was
ethnic backgrounds.
when
It
I was
can
finished,
change
they're
somebody's
like, "Thank you so much, but you didn't quite meet the criteria."
My dad
Criteria.
applied for Mensa as well, or not apply. He did like the test to see if he could
Mhm.
qualify.
That's what I did.
Yeah, he got like his IQ was like 138, and he was like within 6% of the population, but he wasn't enough. But he held on to the
Oh.
letter for the last 30 years and just shoves it in everybody's face.
Yeah, I took
Yeah,
mine like
look at
24
my
years
letter.
ago.
Yeah, little Bill, I don't have ADHD. Like, that's the one thing I don't have. You should
Really?
see all the things I do have.
Really, you don't have 8K? What's going on this monitor?
Oh, look at Vilhammer. He must have heard us
Oh, hey,
asking
Bill.
for his assistance.
Hey, here, Bill, come on.
His ears were
Come
burning.
panel. You haven't come
Hopefully
on.
that's all that
I
was
asked you to
burning.
come on panel, and you're like, I'm too busy.
Well, it is during the week.
Oh, dash cam owners Australia. Okay, so the reason I want to know about this dash cam thing is because I'm going to do a
in the
membership
testing process.
welcome
So
stream,
there's lots of reasons
and it's
why
going to be
people
all
vote.
Aussie things.
Hmm.
Because my memberships are now live.
Are you gonna go tour Rick Springfield's hometown?
Who?
Rick Springfield. You know
Is
the
he
guy
Australian?
that's saying Jesse's girl. He's from Australia.
No,
Really?
I don't know who that is.
You don't know
But
who
I
he
am
is?
going to go through all the Aussie slang because my membership levels are Aussie slang. You won't know what they mean. So I'm going to talk about what they are and a bunch of other Aussie slang. And then we might do some dash cam.
Nice.
Ooh.
I think that's
No idea he was
tomorrow.
Australian.
AC/DC from what? Wasn't AC/DC from Australia
Yeah, Akadaka.
or Def Leppard? I don't
Okay.
remember.
One of them.
All I know is like I had such a huge crush on Rick Springfield growing up. Don't get me started. But
Bobby, that's you.
I told my dad, I'm moving to Australia and I'm going to marry Rick Springfield. Well, that didn't really pan out.
Oh, plan B.
So yeah, tomorrow night, probably about
Or
6:30
Another reason
Nice.
p.m.
is
Eastern Standard Time.
because that person has trouble, regulating and keeping their emotions on an even keel, which, in my opinion, is what impacts Brice. Because when someone has difficulties with everyday thinking, reasoning, problem solving, it's they encounter during the testing very difficult questions. And if you're someone that is easily set off or irritable, then that can be a challenge when you're testing someone. So that's that sort of concept of effort. And in Brice's case, there were, as I said, the two more recent evaluations where the doctors expressed concern about that.
But you were able to view many more than just those two tests. You were able to view, I believe you said 6?
Yes, yeah. And yes, I was.
And is there, in fact, a relationship between intellectual disability itself and some of the way that people measure things like effort?
Absolutely. One of the biggest concerns in what we call performance related testing or effort testing in people with lower IQs is that they tend to produce a lot of what we call false positives. So they will seem on effort testing. We have specific tests that look at effort, one of our concerns always that we're looking for is making sure that we don't say that someone with a low IQ is not performing at their best when they really are. And that's what a false positive is. It's identifying someone as not trying when they really are trying, and that is much more likely to happen with people who have
Excuse
low
me.
IQs
Sorry.
because they have low IQs. So when
It was
a
a
test
sneeze
that seems
gesundheit.
very easy for someone who
Sorry, I couldn't get to
doesn't
the mute in
have
time.
mental retardation or intellectual disability is actually a
Sue.
little hard. It's harder for someone with a lower IQ, and so they may look like they're not trying when they really are. My conclusions about Brice's IQ are based on the bulk of the evidence that I have. I had 6 IQs. There were 2 that there were some concerns about effort. One of those doctors that had concerns about effort actually said, if we
Did she
retested
just
him
say
in a
he
year
had
or so,
6
I would
IQ
expect
tests?
that
I think so.
that he would have
Yep, she did.
an IQ that is actually in the intellectual disability range. And
Well,
so
keep trying. Are you
there was
trying for a better
consistency
score?
in,
What is that?
generally
It's
like
lower
your
scores
SATs.
that I felt confident about. That
Yeah, you
we
only
would
get
still
one
say
chance
Brice
with
met
those.
the criteria
Do you?
for that prong one? That prong one.
I thought you could retake
assessments
them.
in intellectual disability.
Oh, maybe you
intellectual
can.
Oh, I have no idea.
The term effort
I
testing.
had no desire to go.
Our voice is too loud over her.
is malingering.
I checked the
Yes,
ACT.
that would be at the extreme end
Um,
of
Okay, so turn her up.
conscious,
No,
deliberate.
I'm asking
not
chat.
having
It's
Oh.
never quite right
Yes.
in my ears
Malingering
compared
is
to
like
chat, so I was
one
asking
of
chat.
many reasons that people don't put forth best effort. As I said, it could also be because they're having trouble with emotional control, or
He's back.
things are hard and they don't want to do them, or because they don't have a good relationship with the examiner and they feel very nervous, or they're not invested, or tired, or in pain. I mean, there are lots of reasons why people don't put forth best effort. Malingering is only one.
Okay. You were just expressing sort of the effect that intellectual disability itself has, ironically, on testing
I'm
for
not
intellectual
coming back.
disability. Are there some other myths about intellectual disability that would be good to explain to the jury?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like many developmental disorders, part of the problem is that people have a particular idea when they think about a developmental disorder, like autism and like intellectual disability, and traditionally, even like schizophrenia, which is not a developmental disorder, all of these sort of mental conditions, people have like a stereotype in their head. For ID or mental retardation, what people often think of is the person who's very severely or profoundly mentally retarded. So that would be someone who can't walk or can't talk, is in a wheelchair, can't feed themselves, needs 24-hour care, and might have like physical stigmata that tells you that something is wrong with them. Like, for example, Down syndrome, which is typically associated with intellectual disability. Many people think, oh, well, if you're intellectual disability,
My cat has ADHD.
You're going to look funny. I'm going to be able to tell in your
My
face.
cat is
or
a
your
stalker,
body
one
that
of
something
them.
is wrong. And all of that is actually
Like you
not
open the
true.
door in the morning
there you are.
with one eye and you're trying to find,
Disability,
the kitchen to get your
85%
coffee.
look
And it's
totally
like,
normal.
oh, look,
They
she's
have anything
awake.
physically
Feed
you can't
me.
tell.
Every day,
And
same thing.
many people
Like,
with
no,
intellectual
not
disability
yet.
can read and write. In fact, the vast majority, 85% again, are able to achieve reading and
I love
writing
that
skills
cat
up
up
to like
there.
the 6th grade
Here is
level.
the cat.
So, they're literate, not great, but literate,
Hmm.
and can walk and talk, and don't look
Such a sook.
necessarily at first glance, and that's the thing, at first glance, that something is wrong with them.
So you're saying it isn't always obvious on the surface.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about Brice's adaptive functioning. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Adaptive functioning is broken down into different areas. And so what I'm going to do is ask you about some of those areas, and then you just tell us what you were able to conclude about those. All right.
Okay.
Okay. One of those areas, I believe, is communication. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Can you tell the jury what you were able to determine from the evidence about his ability to function in the area of communication?
So I looked at some
Man,
of the,
who cares? He
various,
stabulated some little
interviews
boys.
that were done with family
Maybe
members, for
we want to know how
example,
he's in a
his
relationship.
brother, his stepbrother, his stepmother, and looked at some of the things that they were saying about him. And so what I found was that there were consistent reports of problems with communication, which is both
Jessica.
understanding of language,
Don't you know,
comprehension,
Bobby?
and also what someone is able to express. So, for example,
Yeah, sure. Don't
he
you
was
know,
very much
Ulta?
described as not being a good communicator, bad at listening and comprehension, and this is, by the way, across his life. So, at different points when he was a little kid, but also as a young adult. Folks talked about, him not being employable just because he doesn't have the communication skills to deal with people. He didn't have, this is his uncle saying that he didn't really have the capacity to understand what was going on. That his mom talked about how she took him to a
I don't know if any of
interview
you
with a
saw
manager,
Untamed Heart with
as an
Christian Slater
adolescent,
and
kind of
Marissa
exploring the
Tomei.
idea of him having
I
a
do
part-time
remember that
job. And at
movie.
the interview,
I was in the
she
elevator
described
scene,
his
or the
expressive
escalator
language when he
scene.
was
Me and
able
my
to
friend,
say
we were
anything
extras.
when the manager was asking questions.
And
I used to
Marissa
love
Tomei,
Christian
that
Slater.
generally Brice
oh my
didn't
God, when he
start
walked by me, I
conversations
almost
with adults.
fainted.
So all of those things kind of
He's
brought
hot.
together this idea of both
I still have
difficulties
pictures
in,
somewhere around here.
listening
Because,
and
they'd be
understanding
like,
as well
cut.
as expressing himself.
You have to stop.
When you say
When he touches her hand, he's going down, she's going up, I think. Anyway, but Marissa Tomei, she took the Minnesotan accent a little too far,
Yes, it's interesting. A lot of folks with ID are
in my
described
opinion.
as quiet.
And Grumpy Old
they're
Men
quiet often
was
because they don't have a
filmed
lot to say.
not far
and it's
away
hard
from
for
a
them to
house I was living
express themselves
at the time.
verbally, organize their language, put their
And
thoughts into
Grumpier Old
words.
Men, right by Lake Phelan in St. Paul.
More likely to communicate than with people who are their
Some
age
fun
or
Minnesota movies.
Yes.
Minnesota.
One of the red flags of intellectual disability actually is gravitating towards
Fargo was
younger
a good
peers
show.
and more socially immature
I think
peers
it's
because
still
they
on, isn't it?
literally cannot keep up. They cannot
What's
keep up
that?
with the demands that same age peers
I should watch that.
at all stages of development. So that's when they're
We could do
kids,
it.
but also
We
more
could do a
critically
live
during
stream on Kick
adolescence,
and
because that's
Rumble.
a time when
Watch Party
peer
Fargo.
relationships become extremely important
Movie.
up until young adulthood, that sort of 22, 23. During that time period, relationships with peers, romantic relationships, etc., become really salient and important to people. And if you just don't have like the skills to keep up, then you're going to be quiet, you're going to be withdrawn, or you might gravitate younger people.
5
So
seasons.
someone in their 20s might actually tend to socialize with people who are in
Little
their
Pill, I can't find where you mentioned the name of that YouTube channel, and now could you please post it again in chat? Sorry.
Who are going to be much more subtle, more nuanced in conversation, and it's just easier. And it's also one of the things that people do when they have intellectual disability often is try to mask those problems. And it's easier to mask those problems when you're associating with people younger, because you don't have to work as hard to try and keep up. You don't have to try to put on that face.
I'm going to move you to a different aspect of functioning. That's functional academics. Can you explain to the jury what that is?
Sure. It's basically when we think of
I'm signing into HBO,
foundational
and I thought
skills needed for learning in
I clicked
reading, writing, math, and the translation of those into independent functioning as a child and over time. So, for example, an adult sort of translation of mathematics would be having a bank account, being able to kind of read and understand contracts and pay bills and that sort of thing.
understanding
As a kid,
contracts.
it's more of
I
those
disagree,
basic
madam. Those are
reading,
kind of
writing,
confusing
because
at
when you're a
times.
kid, your work is really school. so
It's not like a
reading,
balance in a
spelling, math,
checkbook.
and as you get older, you start to have a more applied use for that.
And how did he do in functional?
Yeah, Fargo is on
Well, we
HBO
know
Max.
that from school records as early
That's on my
as second
list.
grade, Brice had pretty significant academic deficits across the board. So I looked at second grade scores that showed on standardized testing below average skills across language, math, and social studies, ranging from the 5th percentile to the 14th percentile. And he really struggled across the board. He had special education services in childhood. His mom noted that she tried to enroll him in GED classes as a young adult, but was told that his academic abilities as a young
There
adult
it is.
were too low, and that he actually needed to take remediation classes. And this is evident if you look at Dr. Riley's assessment of Brice in 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, his scores, he would have been around 23 at the time. His reading comprehension was measured then at below the second grade level. And
Bobby,
his
you
math
cracked me
was
up.
at early first grade.
Bobby is hilarious
Oh my god.
when he's not being an ass.
In his life, that was
That's my
another
favorite word.
theme about him performing
In all forms of
poorly
it.
in school.
Thank you,
He was
Loco.
described as a terrible student, learning
I'm
disabilities
like going through
classes,
chat, going,
not
where is it?
good at reading or writing
Yeah,
or
Jessica
academics
B
in
says this
general.
lady
And his
makes
younger
me
brother
question my
actually
own
would help him
intellectual
sometimes,
abilities.
which is
Yeah,
pretty telling.
her.
So again, this
I
idea
mean,
that
pretty much
he just wasn't grasping academic concepts.
everyone has like
at
something
his
she's
grade and
talking
age
about
level, such that even his younger brother
to some
was
varying
able to
degree.
do the kinds of academic tasks that he couldn't.
Another area of adaptive functioning is called social. Can you explain what you're looking for in that area?
Sure. I
I
mean,
have
social is
a-
an easy one because it's kind of
The
self-explanatory.
bad
but,
case of the
so it
squirrels.
means, how
Oh, this
Especially
is
in
great, Lil
Washington.
Pill. Thank you.
their social
Oh,
interactions.
we are so
Having
watching
friends,
this.
It's spending time with those friends.
Nice.
It's also got a component that we measure that's more surface, like being polite. And also, social relates to things like gullibility, being easily taken advantage of by others, not recognizing the motives of others, and also poor
Yeah,
social judgment,
basically.
choosing people to be friends or associating with people who may not be the best for you. So social skills is, really relates to all of those. Actually, I guess it's more complicated than I originally described, but yes, that's social skills.
And then how did he do in that area?
again, looking at both Vineland, mom's rating of him at the age of 15, but also relatives that in their interview discussed significant social deficits, talked about trouble with sharing. Mr. James talked about Brice not being taught how to form happy relationships. He had trouble making friends at school. Even sought out conflicts where it was clear he wouldn't prevail. So, again, we see that a lot in folks that have lower IQs. They struggle to make friends, and they have low self-esteem and they want to prove themselves. But seeking a conflict is not the best way to do that. So it shows really poor judgment. His romantic relationships were described as juvenile. Others talked about him always seeming a little bit immature and struggling to socialize, and being the least intellectually capable despite being the oldest.
And when you say least intellectually capable despite being the oldest, you mean of the siblings?
Correct.
The last area I want to ask you about adaptive functioning is what's called self-direction. Can you tell the jury what that means?
Yeah, that's a really super complicated way of just saying being able to handle, to regulate yourself. So they're regulate, and the term executive functioning is part of that. I think that's a lot in popular literature right now, this concept of executive functioning, which is basically your ability to regulate your emotions, regulate your impulses, initiate tasks without someone constantly having to light a fire under you to get you going, or remind you to stay on task. Attention is part of self-direction. Anything you have to think about that is related to regulating and executive functioning. When you have good executive functioning skills, those are really key to being able to do well in real life. If you have trouble controlling your emotions or your impulses or your attention, that's going to interfere with your success in day-to-day life. So that's what self-direction is.
And then how did Brice do in self-direction?
This was actually one of the areas in which he struggles the most. Again, when you think of his diagnoses of ADHD and bipolar disorder, those are both reflecting problems in self-direction. Bipolar mood regulation, ADHD more attention regulation. So since he was younger, school records from childhood through adolescence shows problems with controlling emotions, being able to focus his attention, being able to sustain his attention. He couldn't focus in the classroom, but he also struggled to focus even in sports like football practice. He was impulsive and impatient as a child, and that continued into adulthood. Mr. Rhodes described Brice as having trouble with concentration and said that there were things that he wanted to try and wanted to do, but could not follow through. He was described as quick to anger, and his mother, in rating that at 15, actually rated him as functioning almost like a preschooler, essentially. Even at 15, he was more like a preschool kid when it came to self-regulation and self-direction. So she said he was at 15 never able to control his anger when there were unexpected changes in plans. He was never.
That's not a good thing.
Control anger when he couldn't get his way. He was never able to think through consequences before acting.
Okay, well, great.
So you told us that you, with all of this work and all of this evidence, you were able to diagnose him with an intellectual disability. But intellectual disability affects different people in different ways. Some people are able to overcome those things. Can you explain to us what the effect, if you had an intellectual disability, what the effect of also having bipolar would be? Would that?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second.
That's fine. Oh, you still can't. Can you explain to us the way a bipolar condition would interact with someone's intellectual disability?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so with a bipolar disorder or mood disorder, that and intellectual disability, it makes it even more of a struggle to manage emotions. So, in both cases, you tend to be more led by your emotions versus using the parts of your brain that are associated with things like making sound decisions, considering future consequences of actions. When you have both a mood disorder and intellectual disability, it's like a double deficit, really, because we use with the intellectual disability piece, you don't have the reserves as far as your cognitive reasoning ability and your language ability to do things like self-talk in a conflict situation or in a potentially dangerous situation or when emotions are running high. You don't have the access to the parts of
I
your brain
wonder
that
if the
say,
jury
"You know what,
cares
calm down is a good
at
idea,"
all
when you're
about
emotionally
this.
riled up. You know what, I need to calm down. That's self-talk. The intellectual disability, because of those deficits in language and reasoning, make it harder to talk yourself down. It makes it harder to negotiate a social conflict or negotiate a challenging situation that's going to come out in a good adaptive way. You're more likely to kind of be led around by the nose.
No,
emotion,
I really don't think they do.
and more susceptible to those mood changes and the problems with
No,
impulse
I
control
wouldn't.
that those mood changes will bring.
I'd be getting
or the
more and more
problems in managing
annoyed,
anger that those mood
actually.
changes bring.
I've been there
We've been talking
for over a
about,
week,
how Brice got here and what
and
influenced Brice. But this
I've been
jury,
pretty sick of hearing about poor Brice by
this
now.
jury has found him guilty of these charges, and the task that lies before them.
I wish
is
they would have,
what the punishment should be.
I don't know. I just
One
find this
aspect
really
of that
nauseating. The
is
man
playing
has
the
murdered
victim.
3 people.
But
Yeah.
the question
One
we have is,
haphazardly,
can Brice improve?
basically,
Yeah, by
because he
mistake.
hit the wrong guy.
Of getting better
And the
at life
second was a game of, should they live or
Sure.
die?
So, as I said, ID is a lifelong
He's a psychopath.
condition.
Doesn't
developed as a
matter.
condition. But what we do know
At
is
this
that
point,
people with
he needs to
ID
go to prison
require
for the rest of his
support.
life.
And
100%.
He should be
the
thankful
folks
that
do
he,
have that support
somebody
do better,
has
do much
determined
better.
he's ineligible
and
for
they
the death
can,
penalty.
and that support can just be,
That is true.
Advice.
He should just
or
be
a lot of
thankful
folks with
with
ID tend
that.
to gravitate
This is
towards people who
all
are
a
older,
bunch of,
more experienced from the advice standpoint, not
it's
not from the
just terrible
socialization
to me.
standpoint.
If
But
I was a family
that
member
support can be someone
of one
who
of
helps
the
them
3
talk
people that
through,
he's
decisions that
slaughtered,
they need to make.
I would probably be in
And
jail for
it's
contempt
also
of
really
court
about skill building,
with
learning
my
skills,
outbursts.
learning skills to control emotions, learning
Yeah.
skills to
This
recognize
isn't
when
one
you're getting
person.
heated up inside.
This is
And you need to
3
do something about it before
people.
you before you become
Yeah.
really angry or before you say something or do something that you shouldn't.
And
So
actually,
it's skill building
Brice,
that can be done more
back to what you were
formally
saying a
through
minute ago
therapy.
regarding
Therapy
the
with
first
a
person.
therapist that has an eye to and experience
He
in
it
understanding
was
people with
mistaken
mental
identity,
disorders. You need someone
right?
ideally with that
The
expertise
whole
who can
idea of killing
modify
someone
or adapt
because they had a
traditional
price on their
therapeutic
head and he
approaches
got it wrong.
for someone with ID, for someone who may not have the language or may not
You-
have the
You
the
analyze
more
someone
nuanced
because they have a
needs of
price on their
therapy
head, what,
approaches
just
like
to get a bit of
cognitive
money?
behavioral
Yeah,
therapy
they
or
needed money.
dialectical behavioral
So
therapy.
they're like, hey,
That's-
we need some,
There's no
we need some
justification for
cash.
that.
Teaching someone how to
So
be
here,
more mindful
let's
of their emotions,
let's
how to
hop in the car
recognize
Makes sense to
and
me.
be able to
you know, drive
exert
down the
better
street.
control
Hey,
over
we've
their
all had
emotions,
those
and
moments.
understand the
thought he
relationship between
recognized
their
the
emotions
guy,
and their thoughts,
mistaken
and
identity,
why they might behave in certain ways. So it
called
helps
the
them
What?
notch
develop
to
more
get out of the
insight,
street,
which would
and
help Brice tremendously.
bang, bang.
And then, of course, on top of that would be medication.
What a
Then,
load of
There
plus
are
on top
a
of it,
plethora of
okay, so
medications
if
that
you're
really
a
help people
gangster, wouldn't you
better
like,
control their
collect
emotions
part of
and
your
also
money
better
first
focus their
before you
attention.
go
They're not
to do said
magical
hit?
pills, but they help.
So they ended up not
And
collecting any
and
money at
especially in
all because
combination
they
with,
hit
as
the
I
wrong
said,
guy.
the therapeutic
There's
approach.
no justification for this
So,
whatsoever.
You talked about the
Zero.
great support.
Yeah.
I just-
Regardless,
there's-
even if it
there's
were the
nothing
right
wrong.
guy, it's still
Could exist, right?
completely wrong.
Correct.
My
You
bad.
told us therapy.
The
right,
guy was
now,
just the guy. Christopher Jones was in the
um,
wrong place
is
at
it
the
fair to
wrong
say that
time.
Counseling.
It's
in-
it's
Even if
horrible.
it were the right guy, though, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter whether it was the right guy or the wrong guy. It's
It's
still
still a
heinous.
deceased person.
Participation
Yes.
in
Yeah.
various programs that could be offered by the Department of Corrections could provide that support, right?
Correct. I understand that there are programs.
I
that
like
relate
the
to,
judge.
especially group programs
Yeah, I
around
like her.
anger management, for
A
example.
couple of people have said they don't really like the judge.
Also,
the judge
resources
pretty good,
that would be available.
To be honest,
Ongoing
she's
resources
messed around a little bit. I thought at
for
first that she was quite
serious
efficient, but
right?
Correct.
and
Yes.
the last couple of days
What we
she's
call those wraparound services.
allowed quite a bit of
So,
messing around.
It's a combination of check-ins and therapy and medicine And then for people
But
with
other than that,
disability,
she's-
you want them delivered. in
I
what's
liked
called
it
a
when the
wraparound way,
defense
where
came
there's
along and tried to get a directed verdict, and she kind of laughed at him.
Provide.
So you're testifying that with the right combination, there's still hope for Brice.
So, what aspects
Absolutely.
of the case
no further
would you like me to consider directed verdict? They went, oh, just the whole thing. Nah.
Good morning, Doctor.
Yeah,
Good
nah.
morning.
So,
Somebody
you reviewed
earlier said,
a number of reports, correct?
ma'am, have you had your
Correct.
eyes checked
Reviewed both
recently?
the school reports and the reports from doctors regarding the previous testing,
Correct.
and you reviewed some summaries of interviews, correct?
Even with
Correct.
Taylor
The only
Business,
interview
they
you
didn't
did
go on and on and on like
with
these.
Rhodes
This
Correct.
is what
That,
expert number
over the phone or by video conference?
3.
It was in person.
Oh, okay. And
They
then
had a fair
you
few
did
experts for
interview-
Taylor,
you
didn't
had
they?
the opportunity to interview the defendant, correct?
They had the one lady.
No, and that was because he refused.
I mean,
to
they had a
interview.
couple. They had the one like
So
that had
as
spent the most time with her. That was the lady that she threw the chair
in
at.
sort of environment
Taylor threw the
for
chair at the lady.
As one does in her defense.
Correct.
Well, you know, she
Again,
probably
that
felt like she was
wouldn't be
attacking her.
appropriate this is a developmental disorder. So as I indicated, so it wouldn't be appropriate to base his adaptive functioning on current any current observations, particularly in an
All right.
incarcerated setting,
Let's listen.
which doesn't approximate the real world.
So for the tests that assessed his IQ, we have 6 different test results, starting with the 2001 test.
I agree with
He
X
was 10
Comer
years old.
ZZZ.
And on that one, he had a full scale IQ of 90, which is in the average range.
So that's correct. It would need to be adjusted, however, for the Flynn effect. So the actual IQ would be more appropriately an 86.
And there's a range where you can have confidence in the result of
Just a small
5
plastic
points
chair.
plus or minus on
Probably with
the
those
other
metal,
pieces there.
those
The
metal
range
legs
depends
that
on the
screw into the
particular
bottom.
test. In the DSM and the AIDD, it's approximately 5, but that's because if they were to list all of the confidence intervals, which is the ranges that you're talking about for individual tests, it would be pages and pages and pages. So in the DSM and the AIDD, they say about 5.
And for the results in the 80s, those are considered low average.
Yes.
And 70s is considered borderline.
So 70s is considered borderline according to the Wechsler, but someone with an IQ in the 70s can still be considered ID because the diagnosis of ID is in the DSM-5 and the AIDD. The diagnosis of ID is separate from the labeling or description of an IQ according to the test. So the Wechsler test can refer to an IQ in the 70s as borderline, but an IQ in the 70s can still meet criteria for ID under the diagnostic criteria.
The second test we have results from is from 2004. And is it correct that we don't have details about this test? We just have the result that it was a full scale IQ of 80.
Again, we don't have the actual test itself, but Flynn corrected. I just want to make sure that we're looking at the right column. It actually should be a 79.
And for the rest of these, we do have more information about them, write-ups from the doctors. That test, we just simply have the result, not the write-up.
Correct, as part of a school record.
In 2007, when he was 16, there was a test by Dr. Berger. And is that one that you reviewed?
There was, I can't recall what it was that I reviewed, but it was the details of the IQ, which was a 72.
Okay. It's 74 with Flynn effect to the 72.
It's actually a 72 if it's more correctly viewed.
Okay. And on that report, Dr. Berger said that the defendant did not appear to be motivated to perform well, did not increase his effort for more difficult tests. Therefore, the results of his intellectual and academic testing should be interpreted as cautious estimates of his actual abilities at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct. He did not indicate that it was an invalid score. He said it should be interpreted with caution.
And the 2013 test was actually taken as part of his application for disability benefits, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm still going back and forth. I'm thinking at the moment Dolly's members, but I'm still toying with the idea.
You're toying with your member.
Yeah. member's idea.
Okay.
Because I could do like D small, D average, D large, but I don't know. That's a little too easy. So, but thank you for the
Yeah.
super chat very much. Much
I think
appreciated.
probably Dali is a little concerned that the whole D small, D average, D large is going to get a little bit old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to kind of get pigeonholed into being creepy.
Well,
Jensen
it's a little
guy.
late. It's a bit late for that, but
Yes, but eventually I want to move on from covering it.
but the Jensen trial will end eventually. That's all.
Yes.
But,
Unless there's a new trial.
Well, there is that, but even when that
Fingers
finishes,
crossed.
that it will be Dali small, Dali average, Dali large. So like
No, that's true.
it's
Dali-
not that big of a deal. People will
True.
see it as being Dali, so it's not that big of a deal. So I think you could still do that.
And then for the
Thank you for the super
13th
chat.
Yes, thank you so much.
Dr. Riley, that one, there was great concern from Dr. Riley about the results. And he actually said the client may not have given his best effort, tended to exaggerate memory problems. Performance may reflect an attempt to present himself in a most unfavorable light in order to receive services or special considerations. The current test results are believed but a gross approximation of the cognitive and academic strengths and limitations that Mr. Rhodes brings to training and employment. Isn't that correct?
Yes, and he indicated that reevaluation in 1 year may reveal borderline or mildly impaired intellectual function.
He also said that the results were most likely invalid of this test, correct?
That's correct. And he said that reevaluation in 1 year would likely produce results that were in the intellectual disability range.
But he also said that even a provisional diagnosis of borderline or mentally impaired intellectual functioning was not believed warranted. On page 7.
He may have said that, yes. And again, I think it's really important to, because all neuropsychologists do this, we're not looking at individual scores, we're looking at them as a whole. So when I make an evaluation of that prong 1, it's looking at all of Brice's scores, not just one, and taking into account, as I did in the chart, some of the concerns about effort, but nevertheless, there is a consistency there that his IQ scores show deficits in intelligence.
And then the final test was in 2021 with Dr. Williams, and there was also a concern about effort in that test as well, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And the score that was produced, again, shows a good consistency of intellectual deficit.
Thank you, Doctor. I have no further questions.
No other questions. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Dr. James, thank you for being with us. We do not have any further questions, and you are free to go.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Toodles.
Bye. Thanks for being so helpful.
Go get that eye checked out there, lady.
Hmm.
Oh, look at them working together. We're gonna get this prosecutor.
Yeah.
Oh, his
They're gonna
band
let
is
me.
falling off. It's coming off.
Oh, what?
Oh,
Oh, Voldemort's about to peek out.
oh,
What's
can
peeking
you
out of
zoom in?
there?
Any other witnesses for the
Is it a gremlin? Gremlin's going to come out.
No, Your Honor, that's
It's like, hello. It's the
That's it.
mini Brice.
Thank you, Mr. Griffiths. All right, we're going to go ahead and break for lunch. We will have one witness when we come back, and then you will get the case for deliberations again. I'm going to ask you to
Okay, cool, sweet.
What's happened?
This is what's so nice about watching it later.
I
Ooh,
know,
we
right?
missed the feed.
Oh no,
Where's the red shoes?
Fluffy.
Come on, show me the red shoes.
Mm.
I don't think that person's wearing their red shoes today, unless we missed them before.
Those sluts.
Dr. Allen's on.
Jane, you ignorant slut. Remember that?
Oh, I love it.
I met Dan Aykroyd.
That was my other question.
Did you?
Office will be right
He
back.
asked me to go back to his hotel and smoke a J.
Oh,
Is
wow.
that all he wanted?
Well, I'm assuming more, but I had school the next morning, which he did not believe.
No,
I had asked
I
him
bet
if he knew where I could get one of those super basomatics, and he thought I was funny. Jane, you ignorant slut. That's when SNL was really good. Actually, the Chris Farley days were great too.
Yeah. Actually, I find feet absolutely disgusting. That is,
Yeah, me too.
will never, ever, ever, ever be a fetish of mine. But I do like making fun of people who,
Who like feet?
yeah, because it's so creepy
Yeah.
and gross.
It is pretty creepy. Yeah, we believe you.
Smart ass. Don't you know?
Don't you know, oofda? Although sometimes I do channel my Mama Meow voice. Let me think. Oh, yes. I used to make search for the domestic feline videos every day. I was channeling Steve Irwin. Is it
Oh.
Steve Irwin? You know, the guy from Australia, the
Yeah.
crocodile hunter.
Yeah, that got
So I, yeah,
squid
and
to
so
his, or
when the kids were at school,
skin.
I'd take like Snapchat or something and I'd put on like, you know, like cat ears and whiskers. I'm like, good day, mates. Today we are going to search for the domestic feline. And then I'd like find the cats. Ooh, what is this one doing? It looks like she's been stuck in some sort of tornado. And honest to God, the kids,
in Discord. Oh, hang on.
the kids would, like, they'd sit around having lunch and they'd be like, did your mom do a Mama Meow video today? I should put them on YouTube. They're so funny.
Oh, damn. No red shoes.
Pics of me.
Understand that the Commonwealth has a rebuttal witness.
Toe pics.
Thank you.
Yeah, I took a picture of a Christmas gift that Dave sent me. The painting behind me. He sent me a couple weeks
What
ago.
is it? I can't see it.
Dolly, Salvador Dolly painting.
Oh. Dave
The
sent
milk-
you a gift.
Yeah, the milk tea
Yeah.
clock.
Oh.
Dave sends
But
everyone
they're
gifts
second.
but me.
Oh, that is super cool.
Could you introduce
It
yourself to the
actually
jury,
kind of
please?
looks
My name's
like
Timothy. I'm a psychiatrist at a
did you ever
facility
used to
called
watch
KCTC, which is a state hospital.
or
What does it
read
stand
the
for?
Far Side
Kentucky Correctional
cartoons?
Psychiatric
Yeah.
And
It
what
kind of
happens
looks
there?
like the boneless
So we do
chicken one.
competency
Oh, yeah.
disavowal and criminal responsibility evaluations by court order throughout the state.
What is the education and training that you have for this position?
So I graduated from U of L in 1994, degree in political
Ooh, I
science,
like
and then I
this
went to
purple
UK College of
shirt.
Medicine where I got my MD in 1998, and then I did a 4-year psychiatry residency at UK, and then a 1-year forensic psychiatry fellowship at Tulane University, New Orleans. So I've had a medical license in Kentucky since
Oh, that's a good
1999.
idea.
And I'm board certified by a national group called the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology in general psychiatry, forensic psychiatry, and brain injury medicine.
How long have you been with KCPC?
Started there in July 2003, so into 20 years.
And are you the only doctor there?
No, so there are 2 other forensic psychiatrists, and then we have 2 nurse practitioners, and we have several psychologists. So there's a whole team.
And are there other employees as well?
Right, we have social workers, nurses, correctional staff. It's a fully staffed hospital that's also on the grounds of a prison.
Did you have occasion to
How are you here?
evaluate
Thanks, yeah.
Brice Rhodes at the request of the court in this case?
I did. He came to our facility on 2 occasions, in 2019 and again in 2022. And so I saw him for about a month each time, and I saw him several times during each one of those hospitalizations.
And during those times, did he live at your facility?
Yes, so he's there again for about a month, 24 hours a day. So he lives on a unit with 11 other people. They have sort of a common area. They have their own rooms. They go to recreation. They have activities during the day, and they have a treatment team, a medical treatment team that I'm the head of. So we see them at least once a week, address any psychological or medical conditions. And so we have, literally 24-hour observation person for a month at a time, and in his case, 2 different months.
What did you notice about his ability to interact with other people, whether staff or peers?
Well, generally we saw Mr. Rhodes function highly. He's articulate. He could
Really?
communicate well.
Oh, do tell.
He performs.
Well, this
what we
is not
call
good.
activities of daily living. They have to do their own laundry. You have to line up at a certain time. You have to know where to be, your meals and your meds and all those sorts of
To do his
There's
own
obviously
laundry?
structure to it. But also, we have people with low intellectual abilities that we have to assist on these things on a daily basis. They need extra help, reminders of where to be, what to do, how to function. Mr. Rhodes had none of those. He was interactive with me. He, again, could express himself very clearly. And so he was never somebody who needed special services that we ever saw as intellectually impaired in any manner. He could function
Ooh.
fully, again, with his peers, with the staff throughout his nearly 2 months with us.
And did you or somebody on your team analyze his whether his intellectual disability?
Yes, so we administered some psychological testing, some of which the results of you probably heard about already. It's one of the multiple psychological test batteries he's undergone in his life. And let me flip to the right pages here. So let's see. So the testing we did was in December of 2021. So it was his second admission. And this is Dr. Williams, our head of psychology. And whenever we give psychological tests, an IQ test being sort of the most prominent one we've probably heard about today, you have to give measures of effort. Because if I give you a simple math test and I ask you what 2 + 2 is, and you don't want to get the right answer, you can say 5, right? So it's really easy if you don't check to have somebody not give your full effort. So we have to give those measures of effort, and we did, or Dr. Williams did, and we got a full scale IQ of 73, which formally falls in the borderline range, but he gave poor effort, and we give specific measures to look for that. These are not something we've created. They're published, they're used everywhere across the country, every university.
BRB.
So he failed those measures of effort. So that suggests that 73 is a low estimate of his true ability. And so, and when we look at his, and then we compare how he's behaved for the month or two he's been with us, compared to that test, we again believe that 73 is not a true score. It's suppressed on purpose by him. Now, granted, that happens a lot. When you're in the kind of situation we're in, you expect those things to sometimes happen because people are under a lot of pressure, all that sort of thing. But the bottom line, the important thing to realize is that 73 is an absolute minimum. And if we only know that score, we think he's better than that or higher than that, but we just don't know how high. Luckily, we have some other information to tell us.
Is it possible to fake up on an IQ test?
No, if you could fake better than your true ability, well, then everybody would do it, right? So if you take an IQ test, you can only get up to your full ability. These aren't tests where you can like guess a couple questions and get a significantly higher score. There's an error of 5 points. So if your real IQ is 100, you can maybe get 105, but probably you're going to get a 99, 101, something like that. You can't fake a 120 if you're 100. And remember, 100 is average. That's the average of all of us, the whole country. So, so generally, your highest score, if you've taken it a bunch of times, is closest to your real score.
Did you look into whether the defendant was suffering from any mental illnesses?
Yes. So that's something we are concerned with all the time. And we treat people with mental illness constantly. I'd say about 80% or 85% of the people we treat, we treat for mental illness with some medication and therapy and other things. We even treat people who don't want to be treated because we see the illness, but they don't admit it. So that's a whole process we have to go through sometimes. In this case, Mr. Rhodes reported some anxiety, and I believe he has anxiety. I think there's some records to suggest he has anxiety. I think he's under a lot of stress and has been for several years while he's facing these charges. That's stressful. So we treated him for anxiety. At one point, I think in the first admission, we gave him an antidepressant, Celexa, for anxiety. This last time, we treated him with Vistaril, I think, which is a mild anxiety medicine. And I think he preferred to be on the medicine. It was helpful. But really, anxiety is all we saw. We didn't see any evidence of depression or mania. We didn't see evidence of psychosis, like hallucinations or delusions. These are all things we look for in every single person, whether they report it or not. We didn't really see any of those things.
Did he have any other psychiatric diagnoses?
So I diagnosed him with the last time. I got my reports right. With really 3 things. One was adjustment disorder with anxiety. That's you're under a ton of stress and you have some psychiatric symptoms that are more than you might expect just for the stress. The second is antisocial personality disorder, which is a history of sort of flaunting the rules and not really going along with societal norms and that sort of thing. And then the last one was polysubstance use disorder, which is drug abuse. If you use drugs and it affects your functioning, you can meet that diagnosis.
And did you see any evidence of bipolar disorder?
I did not. I'm aware that that's been diagnosed in the past, in childhood and adolescence. And from my experience, children who are having behavioral problems, if their parents take them to a mental health professional, they will often get diagnosed with something. It may be oppositional defiant disorder, but bipolar is a common mental illness diagnosis that's given sort of as a provisional diagnosis, and then they try to treat the child to see if you can really affect their behavior. But as an adult, that's never really appeared anywhere in any documentation about Mr. Rhodes. He's never sought treatment because when we talk about bipolar, we're talking about really the 2 poles of it, depression and mania. And so we haven't seen any evidence of either of those as an adult. And he's been incarcerated, I think, since 2016. So he's been seen by jail staff, medical staff, by KCPC, by many, many people. And no one during that past 7 years has said he looks depressed, he looks manic, or he has symptoms of bipolar.
And what would be an example of mania?
So mania is sort of the opposite of depression. You know, depression's run down, feeling bad. Mania is full of energy. And so these people who are truly manic, you don't miss it. It's not subtle. They may only sleep 1 or 2 hours a day. They're moving around constantly. They're agitated. They speak fast. They look hyperactive, but in the most severe sense that you could ever imagine. I teach medical students. I'm like, this is one of the diagnoses in medicine that you can see as soon as you walk in the door from across the room. You don't miss mania. It's severe, and it can get to the point where it affects your thinking. You can get delusional. Very often people become grandiose. I have a lot of money. I'm very powerful. All that sort of thing. So mania is hard to miss, number one, and number two is almost always results in a psychiatric hospitalization. Somebody somebody sees you, goes, that's not right. I'm going to get an MIW. I'm going to send them to the hospital. I'm going to have the police take them or an ambulance take them. We don't have any evidence like that for Mr. Rhodes.
Did you review the defendant's interview with police in May of 2016?
I did.
Did you see any evidence of either the depression or the mania in that interview?
No. So I looked back at my notes, and I actually reviewed the videotape of this, and I've reviewed the transcript of it. Mr. Rhodes was not agitated. He was actually very calm. He was articulate with the police officers. He, denied knowledge about the charges and had relevant questions about it. He was not talking fast. He was not hyperactive. He was not delusional. I didn't see any evidence for that, and certainly no evidence of depression.
So did you conclude, as a result of your 2 examinations, month-long examinations of the defendant, does he, due to any intellectual deficits, lack the ability to appreciate the criminality of his conduct or to conform his conduct to the law?
I found no evidence for those things. I thought, he could appreciate his criminality. He could conform his conduct to the crimes law regarding mental illness and or intellectual deficit.
That's going to be my next question. Thank you. No further questions.
Dr. Allen, it's good to see you again.
Hello.
I understand that you work for KCPC.
That's right.
I think we use that phrase so often. It stands for Kentucky Correctional Psychiatric Center.
That's right.
And this is a state-run hospital.
It is.
And the hospital, there are evaluations conducted there for pretrial clients.
That's right.
And there's inpatient treatment provided.
Yes.
And I think all patients at KCPC are court-ordered patients.
That's right.
And you've worked there for over 20 years now.
I have.
So fair to say that you testify for the state quite a bit.
But I guess it may be semantics, but I've testified hundreds of times. I've done over 2,000 evaluations. Sometimes I'm called by the prosecutor, sometimes by the defense, because my report goes really is court ordered for the judge and for the court.
But you are typically called by someone.
More commonly, yes.
So part of your job is to conduct evaluations for the state or the court.
Yes.
And you come across a wide variety of psychiatric illnesses in that work.
That's true.
Substance use disorders, mood disorders, anxiety disorders,
Yes.
trauma-related disorders,
Absolutely.
and neurocognitive disorders.
Yes.
And you've admitted at a prior hearing that you are not an expert in intellectual disability specifically.
Not specifically. I've not done specific research on it. It's something I deal with, pretty much on a weekly basis as far as treatment and that. But I don't have, beyond the typical psychiatrist, any specialized training or knowledge about intellectual disability.
Let's discuss your evaluations for a little bit. I want to make sure I understand first that you don't work alone at KCPC.
That's true.
You work with a team.
Yes.
But the total amount of time that you spent with Brice, would you say was about an hour and a half?
So in at least one of, if you add up all the time I spent with him, it's probably like in the first admission, he was there 4 weeks. So it's probably a total of about 2 to 2.5 hours. And in the second admission, he was only there, I think.
His eyes.
Well, it was let me get my dates right. Second admission, I think, was shorter. It was only about 2 weeks. So that's probably more like 2 hours or an hour and a half. So the total over those 2 times may have been 3.5, 4 hours.
Okay, I want to take you back through your evaluations.
Okay.
First, would you agree with me that paranoia can be a symptom of mental illness?
Yes,
And paranoia can impact someone in a number of different ways.
I agree.
And it could impact someone's ability to participate in an evaluation.
Sure.
It could impact their ability to take the test that you've administered.
It could.
And based on your evaluation, Mr. Rhodes demonstrated several aspects of paranoia.
I think we've discussed this in a previous hearing even. There's there's some of his behaviors that I guess theoretically could be related to paranoia. But I don't disagree with that.
So if we look to the first report from 2019, I'm looking at page 7.
Okay.
He indicated that one of his habits was to lay out traps in his room.
Right. Yes. In his room at JCPC. That's
So
right.
he's talking about behavior that he's demonstrating, or we're talking about demonstrating while he's at KCPC.
That's right.
And at KCPC, he's in a locked room.
He is.
And despite being in this locked room, he had a standard practice to lay out these traps.
Yes.
And the reason that he did that was to know if other people had come into the room.
That's right.
This locked room.
Yeah.
If people had touched him or his things.
Right.
And he also indicated to you that there were multiple times that he thought that someone had been in his room.
Yes.
That someone had touched his soap, I think.
That's right.
And that would be paranoid behavior.
Generally, yes.
And you didn't bring this up while you were testifying just now.
No. Because being incarcerated, sometimes, in some ways paranoia is healthy. You have to watch out for yourself. You have to be concerned about the actions of others. And so, there's a certain degree of that that's understandable. So I didn't find it raised to the level of what I consider mental illness or something I would treat.
In the second report, which was completed 2023, you indicate on page 2 that he wakes up during the night to keep people from harming him.
Find that.
It's down at the bottom under the hospital course.
What did you say? It said wakes up. Oh, I see it. Yep. Wake up every 30. Yep. I see what you're saying. Yes.
So is that correct, that he would wake up every 30 minutes worrying that people were trying to harm him?
That's what he reported. We don't watch him that closely. They do have regular checks through the night, but we don't have confirmation of that. But I can't deny it either.
And that behavior or that belief could be another classic paranoid belief.
I mean, it would be pretty unusual. It's hard to wake yourself up, even if you truly are paranoid. But I'd say it could be. Yeah.
And additionally, in that same evaluation, the second evaluation, I believe in multiple places, he talked about believing that people were trying to poison him.
Yes.
And that's another classic example of a paranoid belief.
That one I agree. That's pretty classic.
And you've encountered that paranoid belief before.
Sure.
And I think I'm looking at page 6, where he indicated that he specifically believed that the prosecutor was trying to poison him.
Yes.
And that the prosecutor was in a conspiracy with other people trying to poison him.
Right.
And obviously you don't believe that that was actually occurring.
I do not.
And so his belief that multiple people were trying to poison him is a classic paranoid belief.
Could be, yeah.
And paranoia is a symptom of someone who is bipolar.
It can be, especially if you're actively manic.
In the first evaluation from 2019 on page 7, you indicate, you referenced his skin condition.
Right.
I'm probably going to say it incorrectly, folliculitis.
Perfect, actually.
And he indicated that he believed it bled or did not bleed, depending on his belief in prayer.
Right.
And he indicated that if he prayed, then it did not bleed, and if he failed to pray, then it did bleed.
Yes.
And this is not a rational belief.
That's not very rational.
And I believe you
Well, it
testified
depends
to,
if you're
from the
religious.
2023 report on page 2 that he was having anxiety and panic symptoms,
Yes,
and he was given medication for these symptoms,
it was.
and there was a reported improvement of his symptoms.
Great.
I want to talk next about hallucinations.
Okay.
In 2019, in the first report on page 2, when he's meeting with the team, he talked about hearing voices, whispers.
He did.
And he talked about seeing things. He called them shadows.
Yes.
And he saw things moving. These aren't the shadows that you or I might see.
Right.
And that's a little bit out of the norm.
That's out of the norm.
And as a doctor, you might refer to those as hallucinations.
Right. So if they're sort of out of thin air, out of nowhere, they're hallucinations. If they're a misperception of actual things, we call them illusions. So the classic example is when you hear a gust of wind and you think you hear a baby cry, but it's really just the wind. Or you see a shadow and you think it's a person. I'm not sure which of those it is, but it's unusual. It's not normal.
Next, I want to talk about some of the testing results. And you're not the psychologist. You didn't administer these tests yourself personally.
That's correct.
Brice was administered an IQ test,
He was.
and his score, the full scale score on page 4 is 73,
Yes,
and that falls into the borderline range.
he does.
You also administered the ABOS test,
Right.
and you indicated that he scored very low on this measure.
Right. And that test is solely subjective report from his mom. But she basically scored him. Her responses scored him as being having very low adaptive functioning.
And the Abbas test is trying to assess real life situations.
Yes.
And you also testified earlier that when you observe him and when your team observed him in a structured prison-like environment at KCPC, you saw him able to follow the rules.
Yes.
But that's not what the Abbas is trying to measure.
Agreed. It's a different environment.
So the fact that he may have had the ability to follow rules at KCPC where everything is structured and routine does not undermine the Abbas test.
So they're not directly correlatable. So I agree with you there. Now, you wouldn't expect somebody who you see no deficits to be so impaired as reported by mom. But so the difference is pretty stark. It's dramatic. But they're not a one-to-one. So I acknowledge that it's not a perfect comparison.
And you don't believe that you have an accurate measure on the Abbas test?
Yeah, that's true. I think, when you're asking, number one, for mom's opinion, when she knows the circumstances, and number two is she's having to.
Do you want to skip this and go to closing?
I was going to mention there's probably consequences if he didn't fall into line when he was in custody with
That's true.
this place here. That's probably why he followed instructions.
Yeah. But I mean, did you want to keep going with him or go to closing?
Let's go to closing.
I think he should go to closing.
Okay.
I just, again, I get really frustrated when they spend so much time giving us he's got this and he's low IQ. Okay. Then someone somewhere along the line, that's like a society issue that needs to be remedied. These kids are slipping through the cracks left and right.
But they're not stabulating.
Too late now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I
Has
get
have been
mad.
presented to you
so
in
mad.
the evidence, and you believe
Don't hate me.
or confinement of
Oh, look at him.
Mhm.
Oh, he's
Well,
all
look at this.
smiles. Don't drop the soap there, Brice. I
Oh.
hope it's not glycerin soap. Those are really slippery ones.
Oh, I just thought of a funny. Come here, Brienne.
Funny. Oh, are you
Aw.
gonna do funny lip reading? Okay.
I
Do
could
you know
receive
who
her
I
lips.
pot?
Oh,
Oh, it's so funny. I'm gonna go to
Aw.
prison for the rest of my whole entire life.
bandage is coming off.
Look at my luscious lips.
Um,
Oh, I have
ladies
my
and
lip
gentlemen of the jury,
stickers.
we
Dang.
discovered that there's a bit
Okay,
of a
do
typo
any
in
of you
the verdict
follow
form.
iPod
So what I'm
1776?
going to do is simply read.
I'm sorry.
He was on Rumble. He does bad lip readings
Oh yeah.
that
see.
are hysterical.
Yeah, they're really good.
He's on Rumble and Gab and
Yeah.
BitChute. Oh my god! And on Twitter, he follows me on Twitter. I almost fainted.
Oh really?
He's so funny.
Yeah, he's great.
Print.
yay.
Sal, I think you could rival him though. You're really good. That would be good.
I can try.
Mm-hmm.
That would be funny.
Okay. So this is page 10 through 16.
I had to battle the Hound the other day. It didn't go well.
The what?
Oh, sorry, it's Game of Thrones reference.
Oh,
I've been calling her his the female defense lawyer, Brianna Tarth from Game of Thrones.
Ah.
I think that's a woman. What is a woman? Okay. Well,
Thank you, Dr. Mills.
good Lord, now
We've
she's,
spent 12
sta-
days trying to determine,
now she's
trying to
stapling it.
give reasons why he might have a glimmer of parole
I
at some
just
point. This
wanted
is not.
to make sure he knew
I'll be
how
fine.
to float. Anna, Bryce's stepmother, told you yesterday about teaching Bryce how to float.
How to fight the White
She wasn't
Walkers.
trying to make Bryce swim team captain. She was
I'm
simply
sorry,
trying to make sure that he knew.
but every
how to
time she
float.
talked about floating, it just reminded me of Pennywise
They
from
all
the original It.
That was-
Yeah.
I'll float down here.
I was
Sorry, I'll be
swim team
quiet.
captain when I was in high school. And I was also a lifeguard for 6 years. And I agree with Anna that it is very important that we teach our children how to float. In the 6 years that I lifeguarded, I
Okay,
was very
Pennywise.
fortunate that I only had one jump in rescue.
You need a
And I
Pennywise
remember it
overlay.
very vividly. The young man that I pulled out of the water that day, he didn't know how to swim. He just drifted into the deep end.
They say that.
YMCA, there was a line, the cutoff between the 5, 6.
Please don't bring
8
race
to
into this.
10 feet, and he went over the line and didn't know how to swim. He didn't know how to float. He was okay. I blew my whistle. I jumped in. I pulled him out, and we filled out an incident report. And while I was finishing the incident report, he went back to the pool deck. And before I had the chance to finish completing the incident report, I heard the whistle blow again. And when I came out back to the pool deck,
Okay.
I saw that my fellow lifeguard was in the water with this young man again, pulling him out of the water. And before that young man left the pool that day, he tried to get in the water for a third time. To an outsider, to an onlooker who didn't know this man, it didn't make any sense. Why would this young man who did not know how to swim, did not know how to float, keep getting back in the water and trying to go to the deep end? What was wrong with him?
I'm going to assume you mean Crime Spies, and this is Crime Spies, Daniel.
No, Daniel means this chick here.
Oh, the lawyer?
The defendant. The defender,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, she's
So
a-
Daniel knows who Crime Spies is. He was here yesterday.
Yeah, basically how many years he'll get if he's eligible for parole or when. But yeah.
Was he trying to play games with this? Did he want to drown? Why did he keep doing this? It doesn't make sense if you don't have context. I had the chance to speak with him while we filled out that incident report. And I came to learn that he didn't come to the pool on his own. He came to the pool with an assistant, with a caseworker, someone that helped him with his everyday living activities, helped him manage his money, helped him get on the bus, and helped him get his exercise. And they were working together on learning how to float, how to swim. And his goal was to one day, perhaps,
Spoilers, she
learn to
sucked
swim
at her
at the
job.
end. Now, I have no idea whether that was something that this young man was capable of, but he clearly wasn't capable of it at that time. At that time, he did not know how to float, but he didn't understand that. All he wanted was to keep on the progress that he'd been working with his caseworker. All he wanted was to show that he could do it.
Oh
He
my
was not
God.
understand that he couldn't magically decide to do something and then be capable of it. He didn't understand
This
all
is
those steps that he still had
ridiculous.
if he was indeed able to take those steps.
Ugh.
Anna told us about Brice. She said, I just wanted to teach him how to float. And that's really just another way to say, I just wanted to teach him how not to drown.
Oh my God, stop with the
And
Pennywise
that's what Anna told you that
references.
she was doing. Making sure Brice stayed,
They all float down here.
making sure that he didn't drown.
Want a balloon?
And unfortunately, I don't think that the water was the only place that
Oh
Brice
God. Please tell me it wasn't a black kid. It was Corn Pop. You're muted, Crime Spies. Are you there, Crime Spies? You're muted. But, oh my God. This is Corn Pop. He saved Corn Pop's life and he went on to battle Joe Biden.
Corn Pop.
Bad dude.
Oh my
It's
God.
got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun.
Curly hairs. Oh my
When the
God.
kids come up to them and rub my legs down, and then come back up. She saved Corn Pop's life to do battle with Joe Biden.
Yeah, with the rusty razor blade, wasn't it? The rusty razor blade and the chain.
I apologize for calling you Esther. I don't apologize for telling you to get out of the pool.
Oh my God, you have that memorized.
I do.
I get
You
like
really
the gist
do.
of it. I get amused just watching the kids going, "What is this guy talking about?"
Yep.
And they felt like
roaches,
roaches.
yeah.
They call them the black kids roaches. Jesus.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Was drowning. I think from the evidence that you've heard over the last 2 days, yesterday and today, that from a very young age, Brice has been drowning. He's been trying to stay afloat. He's not been trying to swim. He's
Oh
not been
my
trying to reach.
God.
He's been
Really?
trying to stay afloat.
He's trying to go to Joe Biden.
And before I go any further in discussing Brice's life and
Oh, please do.
the decision that you're ultimately going to make today in this case, I want to be very clear about what this part of trial is about and what it's not about, and what I'm here asking you to do. This phase of trial that we've been doing this week since Monday is not about accountability. You've already found Brice accountable. You listened to the evidence last week and on Monday, and you made your decision Monday night. The decision that you have today is punishment. And nothing that we've presented to you over the last 2 days, and nothing that I'm going to discuss with you now, is meant to take away from that accountability or that loss of life. Horrible things were done in May of 2016. An innocent man was gunned down in the street, and 2 teenagers were then brutally murdered. And you've held Brice accountable for his participation in these murders. The murders of Christopher Jones, of Maurice Gordon, and Larry Ordway. You've heard from their family members, those who have lost their loved ones. And I'm going to leave it to the state
Did you
to
hear me,
discuss
Buck?
that with us, because that's their place.
Rebut.
The state now wants you to lock Brice up. They want you to lock him up and throw away the key. And they want you to be angry. I want you to think about how many decisions you've made out of anger, and about how many of those decisions
Oh,
you
I
later
can't
come
with
to
this woman.
regret. Why do we pause? Why do we stop? Why do we take a breath? Because when we act out of hate and anger, we lose empathy. We lose our heart. So when someone's life, Brice's life, his life and his freedom is at stake,
Lord.
I'm asking you to do something different, something difficult,
What?
something that may be uncomfortable. I'm asking you to hold on to your empathy,
This
and
is
your heart.
disgusting.
Because no matter what Brice did on his worst days, Brice is still a human being. And so I'm asking you to make a rational decision. I'm not asking you
What?
to let him walk out of
He's
the
been
courtroom.
spared the death penalty, ma'am. I think that's good
I'm not
enough.
to you. I'm not asking you to give him a total sentence of any specific term of years. Let's not forget that there is now no small sentence available to Brice now. The minimum available to you to punish Brice is 20 years on each count. And 20 years is a long time. But I'm not asking you for 20 years. I'm asking you to give Brice a chance at parole. I'm asking you not to give him life without the possibility of parole. I'm asking you to keep empathy and your heart close at hand when you decide what punishment to give him. And I'm asking you to have just a little bit of hope for Brice. Hope
Why?
that with medication, he can overcome the symptoms of his mental illness, his bipolar disorder.
This
Hope
is
that
just
with therapy and the help and support of his
objection.
Maybe
medical
Brice was
care,
Corn Pop.
that he can learn how to manage his emotions, to regulate himself in times of stress, and manage to live in this world with his mental illness and his intellectual
This is so
disability.
stupid.
It
Hope
is
that with
really
the passage of time,
It is.
nauseating.
at least 20 years, that he will change.
She
And that
has to
will
make
change
it.
because he will have something to work towards.
She has to look at her
Something to make
face
him
in the
work and
morning
work hard on his
after
own
she's told
rehabilitation.
this
A
garbage.
chance, just a spark of hope, a parole, one
No, it's a job.
never a guarantee. Just a simple spark of hope, a reason to think, to reflect, and to work hard on who he wants to be. Punishment without understanding is not justice. It is vengeance. And all I'm asking you to do today is to give Brice consideration. I'm asking you to grant him mercy.
He didn't give the brothers
asking you to give him-
consideration when he decided to play
Until
a game.
today, since 2016, the weight of his life and what happens to him has been in the hands of legal teams of the state and the defense.
Well,
But the
multiple
end of the
defense
day,
kids kept spitting in their
that
face. But
will be passed to you. It is a heavy weight, I know. We've carried
I
it
don't
for
know.
a
I
long time.
couldn't live with myself if I had to
So
spew
while
this
I won't talk for
garbage.
too long today, I do need to make sure that I
Would you pause for a
what
second,
we're
please,
looking
Sally?
about Brice.
no,
Make sure
Okay. Everyone, don't shoot me down, but there is one argument. There is one argument for giving him hope, right? And that is that when you give people like this who are quite violent and angry offenders a chance of parole, they're more likely to behave in prison. And
Oh, that's
not
a really
cause
good
trouble.
point.
Yeah. So
I
quite
let my
often what will
anger
happen-
take over my common sense.
Yeah.
I get it.
So what
And
happens is
they're more
sometimes-
likely to better themselves.
yeah, they're more likely and sometimes what judges will do if the case is not so much in the public eye and they're unlikely to get so much backlash from the community, is they will give someone life with parole with no intention of them ever getting parole, and the parole board, and they'll make a note, and
Yeah.
the parole board will know that they're never getting parole, really.
Yeah.
Like Manson.
But yeah,
Oh, was he
and
eligible for parole?
Yeah, I think he was up for parole
Mhm.
several times.
My
Yeah.
uncle and cousin knew him. They worked in the same prison with Manson.
Oh, I did a
Like, I-
paper on him when I was a senior.
I
in
asked my
school.
cousin, or I asked my uncle about it, and he's like, I asked him what he was like, and he's like, Manson, creepy.
Yeah. Parole boards might change. So, but I mean, the point I'm trying to get at is that it can be advantageous to not just the prison guards, etc., but to just
Yeah.
everybody involved, and to the defendant himself, to have this hope that eventually they might get let out. That might be the case, that they might actually end up being less trouble for everybody in prison. Because if they have no hope, why not just
Yeah.
go around stabulating people and just being a downright menace? This man has brutally murdered two little boys and a 40-year-old. What chances do you really have of,
Yeah.
and especially if they're consecutive life sentences? So 3, 40, 20, 20, and 20, and he's 30 something now. He really wouldn't be eligible until he was like well into his 80s,
Yeah.
60 years. So what? I can't do math.
I mean-
30 plus 60.
I mean, he's not going to be a threat to anyone at 80.
Do we think he's good at delayed gratification? Yeah, you're probably right. Like, if he were given life with parole, yeah, he probably sees the writing on the wall. Being even as stupid as he is, he probably is like, well, it's so far away anyway, I might as well act up. But yeah, I'm just putting it
Devil's
out there.
advocate.
Sometimes judges do that with that in
Is
mind.
this just for
Anyway.
like extreme people, like, you know, this guy? Because I mean, I'm
Stop being
thinking,
sensible, are you?
isn't Zachariah Anderson in prison without parole?
No, he has parole,
does
but
he?
it's not until he's in his 70s.
Oh, that's
or-
correct.
Or
That's
I think
correct.
like Tim
Be an
Bleefnick,
old man.
I don't think he got parole. I don't think he was
Yeah.
eligible.
Why
Um,
even have life without parole if not for this guy? That's absolutely true, Matt. And I'm not saying he should have life with parole. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that that's why some judges do it when it's just their decision. I've seen it happen here, especially in my country. That's why it happens sometimes.
I want you to take your time with that decision and not to feel pressured to reach a verdict, to take your time. To carefully weigh the evidence that's been presented to you. Brice's future, his life is at stake. And I want you to carefully weigh all the evidence that's been presented to you last week and this week. I understand that the state wants to punish Brice, but I want to make sure that that punishment is one of justice, not one of vengeance. And it isn't an easy task. And the law does require you to make a few more considerations before you return a verdict as is.
Sue, really?
Follow that law.
Oh, geez.
To consider all of the evidence that's been presented to you, to consider the full range of penalty. You're required to consider
It
minimum
sucks.
just as much as you're required to consider maximum. The law tells you in your jury instructions on page 4, instruction number 4, that
Sorry
your
to hear that,
vote
Sue.
penalty as a punishment cannot be out of prejudice or fear of later prejudice or later criticism. Your vote cannot be based on what everyone out there thinks. It is your individual moral decision, not anyone else's. And I'm asking you to vote for a chance, for hope, and for an ounce of mercy. I'm asking you to vote from your heart, from your own moral compass. And I'm asking you to be willing to do what is uncomfortable. And the law may require you to not fear criticism and what everyone else out there thinks, and that's not easy to set that aside. But it is what is required of you today. Giving Brice a chance at parole is the right choice in this case. It might be an uncomfortable choice, but it is the right choice. And it is the right choice based on Brice's intellectual disability, on his bipolar disorder, and the overwhelming amount of trauma and abuse that flooded his upbringing. In your jury instructions, you'll read on page 4, instruction number 3, that you have to make a determination as to an aggravated circumstance. Even if you make this finding, even if you find this aggravating circumstance, there is no automatic penalty. You may still fix his punishment at a sentence of 20 to 50 years at life without possibility of parole for 20 years, for 25 years, or life without possibility of parole at all. You are also required to consider any mitigating or extenuating facts and circumstances that have been presented to you in evidence and that you believe to be true. And a mitigating circumstance, and I am going to read on page 1. A mitigating circumstance is any fact or factors about Brice Rhodes, about the crime or the case, which do not justify or excuse the offense, but in fairness and mercy, lessen or reduce his responsibility or moral culpability for the crime, or which demonstrate that he is someone whose past or present circumstances indicate that he should receive a penalty other than life without the possibility of parole, or life without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Anything that you've heard, you could decide, you could find is a mitigating fact or circumstance. And you don't all have to agree as to those mitigating circumstances or facts. 6 of you could find that his mental illness is a mitigating circumstance, and 6 of you could find that his intellectual disability is a mitigating circumstance. You don't have to agree as to the mitigation, as to the mitigating circumstances. You do have to agree ultimately to a penalty. There are certain mitigating circumstances that you are specifically required to consider, and those are on page 3 of your
Oh, that's interesting, Denny Dawn.
You are required to give consideration to Brice's bipolar disorder, his relative culpability, and his intellectual disability. This week, you've heard additional evidence about Brice, about his.
I just see that cat typing
bipolar diagnosis.
furiously every time she.
I know that it's hard to go back to last week and to think about the evidence presented to you then. But in order to consider, as the law requires you to do so, these 3 mitigating circumstances in particular, I'm asking you to think again about what you heard last week in light of what you've heard this week. Last week, the state would have you believe that Brice was the mastermind, the adult, the one in charge, telling everyone what to do, the leader. And they told you this was because he was the adult, that it was strange for this adult to be hanging out with teenagers. We already know from last week that Brice wasn't the only adult present. There are at least 2 other adults who were present the night Larry and Maurice were murdered. At least 2 other adults about which we know very little. And now you know more about Brice, and you know about his capacity, his reduced capacity due to his mental illness and his intellectual disability. I'm asking you to reflect on what you heard from Dr. James about Brice's intellectual disability this morning. She told you that Brice struggles intellectually and that he has a low IQ. And the state wants you to believe that his IQ is maybe a little higher, and maybe it is, but not much higher. It's still a low IQ score. Dr. James told you that it is not uncommon for someone with an intellectual disability, like Brice, to spend time with people who are younger. It makes sense. We like to surround ourselves with people that are perhaps of similar functioning. We know that Brice doesn't like to be embarrassed or do things that he isn't good at or that he's afraid of. It makes sense that he would want to surround himself with
Since he'd want his lawyer to call him a retard in open
people
court.
he feel equal to, not behind. Brice struggles with thinking. We know he struggles with school, with his homework, and with basic tasks. Anna told you yesterday about her experience struggling with Brice, or with Brice struggling from a parent's perspective. And Dr. James today told you that not only does Brice struggle intellectually, but he struggles with what she calls adaptive functioning, his ability to function and do day-to-day, everyday tasks. And Dr. James conducted an in-person assessment with Brice's biological mother, LaShawna, who was with Brice throughout most of his childhood.
Pretty much, Sean Gary.
Childhood and memorandums from his family members, and she found that he had severe deficits in the areas of communication, functional academics, the social arena, and self-direction. Brice struggles in just about every area of life. Brice is continually trying to stay above water, to not drown, to simply function in everyday life. It's harder for Brice than it is for most of us. And on top of that, he has a mood disorder, a bipolar disorder. And you heard that from Dr. James as well.
No, I forgot.
And Dr. James told you how that mood disorder interacts
I don't have
with
this.
his intellectual disability, compounding the challenges and difficulties that he has navigating everyday life and managing emotion and his reactions. You've held Brice accountable for his actions in May of 2016, and I'm not asking you to rethink that decision. I am asking you to take all of this that you've heard this week into consideration when you make your decision. You can take into consideration in your decision the plea deals that are in evidence. You can still review those if you'd like to, and I encourage you to do so if you want to see them again. Ann Carter and Corey Taylor each received 10-year sentences. I believe one served 3 years and one served about 6.5. Now those sentences are not available to Brice, but you can consider.
No, they're not.
When you decide how to punish Brice.
You're comparing apples and oranges
Even
here.
if you find the aggravating circumstance,
I think
you
she's
still
comparing
consider
apples
Brice's
to
disability and his bipolar diagnosis.
steak.
We talked a lot about credibility of witnesses last week.
Apples to steak.
And when you want a diagnosis, when you want help and the right treatment,
Come on, come on,
who
come
you
on.
go to? Maybe for a cold or the flu, you go to a journalist. Something quick, something cheap, something easy. But if you think there's something more serious wrong with you, if you suspect cancer or something really serious wrong with you, who do you go to? Do you go to a generalist, a jack of all trades? Or do you go to a specialist, someone whose career and study and expertise is in your treatment, your diagnosis, and your condition? The state brought in the state's witness, Dr. Allen, from the state hospital, and he told you what he thought about Brice and his intellectual disability and his bipolar disorder. But Dr. Allen is not an expert in intellectual disability. You heard?
This is seriously insane.
It's stupid.
I'm just repulsed.
It's just dumb. If you're on the jury, like, what are you thinking right now?
Yeah.
Like, shut up. We've been here for so long. God.
Dr. James this morning, a neuropsychologist whose specialty
I don't know how
is in
she can look at
intellectual
herself in the
and
mirror.
neurodevelopmental disorders. And she told you
What does the kitten have to say? The typing kitten.
God, my tablet.
I agree with Jessica. The jury is probably checked out.
No, they've definitely checked
I'm
out.
I'm just distraught. I'm thinking about the the teens and their families, the innocent man, mistaken identities family, listening to this for 2 days. And then my anger takes over.
Retarded.
We've got a good crowd over on Rumble. Hello, Rumble people. I think you might be a little confused.
Hey, guys. What's going on, Dolly?
Is it not showing?
No. Do you know that?
I see a white.
My StreamYard isn't. My browser is messed up at the moment.
Oh, okay. Good thing we asked.
Can you play it?
Oh, yeah.
Or what's going on the screen? I can't see it.
Okay,
Oh,
nothing. So
wait.
we've got a big blank screen. And
Well, there's
maybe
like it's kangaroos.
stop sharing and share again.
Can't even get into the screen. I'm going to have to exit and come back. Just give me 1 sec.
Okay, sure. No problem. You do that and we will chitty chat. So I will put us like this.
Oh,
Hello,
Jenny
Crime Spies.
Dawn. Hello. Good day,
Hey, how's
mate.
it going? So it's time for us to say hello to. Oh, he's back. Listen, I think he's coming back. Oh no. So your friends over on Rumble. Hello.
Oh,
Nice
yes.
to see you all.
Yeah, it's been, good over there. It depends. I get a lot of chatters during more of like the political stuff. But
Yeah.
the true
Okay.
crime stuff, we still get, there's always people coming in and out. They're very,
So-
very, very nice group of people over there.
Do they ever
And
come
I'm
over
on
to
Kick
YouTube
too.
or not?
I'm on Kick too and YouTube. We're all,
Okay.
Crime Spies is all over the place.
Oh, you are. You
You
get
have no
around.
excuse not to find me. I
And intellectual
tease.
disability and extreme trauma.
I was just
We're not
reading
the
Denny
only-
Dunn.
we're not.
Oh, she's
I think
back.
maybe we all would.
Denny Dunn's comment. The real thing that makes me upset with these criminals, they get free degrees inside, while so
Do
many
they?
people on the outside cannot do because they don't have the money.
True.
Oh, well, you can't do anything with it anyway.
And 3 square meals a day. I mean, I don't know.
That's true.
Jessica B. I'm
No
heartbroken
one
for
had
the
to go through
families
this
of the
experience.
victim.
But no one
Yeah.
has such disadvantages.
And even
Our
Brice's
stories
family, but
experience
this
so much trauma.
testimony
We
is
all
more.
can agree on that, but they do. And these people will always exist. And so we have to remove the stigma around these disorders and treat them with empathy and from our hearts. People like Brice need help. More assistance than most of us. More help simply to not drown
Wine?
in the hardships any of us may face on a day-to-day basis. Through no fault of
Swiss?
Brice's own,
What's a
He started
Christmas
this-
cheese?
he never had a chance. Drowning
Christmas
before he ever
wine.
learned to float, let alone swim. And just because he has a mental illness,
Sal?
mental disability,
Sal, you
because he
crack
experienced
me up
some
so
trauma,
much.
does not mean that he doesn't deserve to be punished. Just because he never had a chance doesn't mean he didn't have a choice. The law does demand, however, that you take it into consideration. Brice does not need to be locked away forever. What did Brice not have
Namaste,
before
Sal.
abuse, trauma, the lack of effective and consistent intervention at a young age, lack of the right diagnosis and medication at a young age,
The right pocket square
and the
can do,
chaotic
can do a man wonders.
The
Dr.
smart,
Barbarian, expert in trauma, spoke to you
the
on
smart
phone, and he told you
silk
about his trauma.
or
He told you about
polyester.
adverse childhood experiences with other cases.
I think the one he had in
Peter
the first
experiences
day
many
trial
may
was
have
paisley
more
print.
to that.
I
But he also told
remember
you
it
that
being a tone-on-tone
1 in
gold.
100 have a score of 7, and that's only 1 in 1,000 has a score of 8, 9. And he told you Brice has a score of 8.
Namaste. For those of you who live in California, my friend has
When I say
a
Brice started from
massage
nothing, when I
therapy
say that Brice
place
is
called
just
Namaste
barely
Therapeutic
managing
Body
not
Works.
drown,
I could go take a visit right about now.
that is why. I don't want to go through each individual adverse childhood experience because you just heard that testimony. But what you heard
I'm
from Dr.
sure
Barbarian
he's
was
going to be
talked
doing
about
some
in chapter
wonderful
was the
rehabilitation
chaos and abuse
things in
of Brice's
prison.
life, of his childhood.
I
We heard
wish
from
he
Anna
didn't.
Said no one
that she knew
ever.
that there was abuse going on in his mother's household. And Dr. Garbarino told us today that Brice's stepfather would emotionally abuse Brice, alienating him from his own family. Brice was made to feel that he wasn't loved. He was alienated by those who were supposed to protect him. Anna told you about the time that his mother came to take
I
Brice
really
to
wish I had the
private,
violin
and how he didn't
music
want to
for
go.
the entire
He
closing
never
now.
happened in front of a child that way. He was afraid.
Is this the closing?
That was the type of environment that
Yeah.
he grew up in.
Oh.
When he was afraid to return.
Defense goes first.
He was punished.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was the closing. Yeah, but I just not sure.
And his stepfather physically.
I'm from
abused.
Minnesota, don't you know?
And because Brice's mother was
Oofda.
in an abusive relationship, dealing with her own very violent trauma.
Boy, so we find out Brice is a retard and had all this emotional abuse and was this poor victim, and oh, this guy's gone through so much, and all I have to say is sorry.
Do not shatter my image of you. You're a badass. You're not scared of shit. Don't be scared of me. It's a disappointment.
Ooh, little Jack.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, we'll continue.
Trauma and
Yep.
survival. Brice was left unprotected. Unprotected to observe the brutal violence committed by his stepfather against her. He saw him cut his mother's hair.
Is anyone having trouble hearing court over the music?
That's something Brice witnesses.
Let me know.
I'm having trouble hearing court just generally,
So
actually.
his development was stunted, it was changed. He was developmentally crushed by the adversity and trauma that he experienced in his childhood on top of his mental health and intellectual disability. I've asked you to have hope for Brice. And Dr. Barberino and Dr. James have told you that there is hope. Brice is not a lost cause. He has overwhelming challenges that he's going to have to overcome and decide for himself to overcome. And he cannot do it alone. Dr. Barberino has told you that he does have the capacity for change, the capacity for hope. He needs to be medicated, and he needs therapy, and he needs time. And no matter your decision today, he's going to have access to those three things. He can receive medication and therapy,
It's as high as it can go now.
and he's likely going to serve at least 20 years, so he's going to have plenty of time in prison. The time that he needs to work on himself. And he can also receive and be ordered to maintain his medication and his mental health treatment if he is ever granted parole. His stepmother, Anna, will also be there if he's paroled. She told you that. She's been in the mental health profession in this area in Indiana and Louisville for 28 years, and she can help, and she wants to help Brice connect with mental health professions in the area. With the resources available to him. And if he fails to do what he is told, his parole can be revoked and he can be sent back. And if he doesn't try in the first place, if he doesn't try medication, if he doesn't try therapy, if he doesn't try the programming that's available to him in the Department of Corrections, if he doesn't apply himself, he may never be paroled. Which is why I'm asking you to give him that chance, that hope to work towards. Give him a purpose to work towards, to keep him on track. He has a lot to overcome, and it may seem insurmountable.
How do you feel about the
It
situation,
may
Sarah?
feel easy to give up on Brice and to do as the state asks you.
You done with it?
But I'm asking you not to. The law does
You
require
like sad music?
all of the
It's nice and
all
relaxing.
of the witnesses, and to take into consideration Brice's mental illness, his intellectual disability, his relative culpability, his trauma,
No.
and anything
His
else in the evidence
culpability is
presented to you,
100%.
in your whole heart, you find cause for leniency. I want to end by taking us back to what Anna told us about Brice's brother. Brice's brother came to their family about the same time that Brice himself did. And his brother also struggled with school. She told us that he had behavioral outbursts as well. Anna wanted both Brice and his brother to stay with them, to attend a good school with good resources, to be assessed and to receive help at school, to be loved and nurtured, and above all else, safe. We know that when Brice was with Anna, he came out of his shell, he let down his guard. He got just a taste of what it was like to be loved, to be safe and protected. But Brice did not get to be with Anna for very long. His brother did, his brother stayed. And his brother went on to excel at sports and at school, and is now a professor. And you know where Brice is. Brice is right there. Sitting here today, his fate in your hands. With love, with intervention, with treatment and consistency, Brice's brother was able to find resiliency and eventually stability that led to his success. And I think the evidence presented to you over the last 2 days shows that while Brice did not have the love, intervention, treatment, or consistency in his childhood, that he can find those things in his future, behind bars in a correctional setting, and that he will have the best motivation if you grant him the mercy of a chance at parole to work towards. On Monday, you didn't have the opportunity to know Brice, to take into consideration his life and his mental health. Just as any onlooker at the pool that day at the YMCA when I had my first rescue, just as any onlooker did not have the opportunity to understand the young man that I pulled out of the pool and got back in the water 2 more times. You did not on Monday have the opportunity to understand Brice. And you now had an opportunity. You know more about who Brice is. I wish that 9-year-old Brice was here.
Oh my
He could talk
God.
about his work, what his life was like, and what he was going through at that time. But 9-year-old Brice isn't here. And we can't save 9-year-old Brice.
We can't save 9-year-old Brice.
And it may take
Jesus.
time for him to learn to float again. But I ask you to give him that chance. To
They all float down here.
Oh God, he's got a floater.
A chance at life.
He's a floater, that's for
He's a
sure.
floater. Sure is. That deserves an Academy Award. Jeez, man, you've missed your calling.
Oh, almost ended the stream there.
Oh, you
kidding,
got so
kidding.
excited you almost ended the stream.
I'm not asking you to lock
Sal nearly came.
what I'm asking you.
I'm gonna come.
I'm gonna come to
Do you guys still hear the violin music?
Yes. Hang on, us chat. Guys, do you hear the violin music?
Eligibility would be 85% of the sentence, but we'll cap
Yeah, I can hear it.
Eligibility is 20 years.
Okay.
So once it passes 24 years, for the rest of that 5 years, 40 years, 50 years, his parole eligibility is 20 years. So he needs more than 20 years.
Maybe you
Oh
just
yeah, I guess that could count.
So the parole eligibility is also 20
Yes.
years.
You can
Like,
hear
without
violin,
parole,
but not chord.
5 years.
That's
It's a 5-year difference between that life and this life.
so
And then the final
yes.
possibility, life without
I just
parole.
turned it off, but
Well, how are we supposed to answer you if you just turned it
We're
off?
asking for that for a number of reasons that I will go through.
I can't turn on the cord anymore.
So you also consider whether these sentences run concurrently or consecutively to each other, and you consider the sentences for the other crimes. I'm going to focus on this because this is obviously the bulk of what we're talking about here. Now, when you are making a determination, as you see,
This woman, you ignorant slut. God damn it.
Quiet, quiet, quiet. Blow your eardrums out.
Yeah, I need to get with you on OBS because
Each source.
yeah,
So like each microphone, each video, your music on the side or sound effects, you can adjust every single source independently. And there's that like green, orange, red meter that you can adjust so you can visually see if something's going totally wonk on you.
yeah, that would be huge. I'm gonna
Yes,
turn it
but
down.
OBS
I'll show you.
OBS is impossible.
It was a lot harder on my MacBook because
Oh.
you have to download patches like for the audio.
You know,
it
okay, you know
functions
how
a
to
whole
run
lot
it on
better
Mac.
on a like a PC.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not. I mean, I was using it on my MacBook. Once I figured out the black hole channel patch thing for the audio, then it was all
So
good.
complicated.
No, it's
So
not.
Valhalla Raiders.
That's why people don't use it. They
Hey,
think it's so
Valhalla.
complicated. It's piece cake.
It is complicated.
Yes, Denny.
I will show you.
Can you? I'll make you a mod as well, Crime Spies, so you can post links. But can you post?
What? I've never had a wrench before.
Really?
Stray's here. Stray can post everything.
There you
Do
go.
you have two ladies have YouTube channels? Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Hey,
both
Jenny
do.
Dawn, thank you for that.
Yeah, post the link.
that you have heard. The entire trial. You're allowed to
It can't
consider-
possibly be more difficult than Photoshop. I've been running Photoshop since I was a teenager, Mads, and I'm a lecturer in Photoshop. So yeah, Photoshop is pretty.
Oh,
Pretty
thanks,
difficult.
Valhalla, for the raid.
Thank you, Valhalla. Hey, Luna.
Grandsons, brothers, and a little sister that you never met named Larissa.
And nice to meet you, Jenny Dawn. Welcome.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Lives cut so tragically short. You can consider all that. And yes, you can consider the mitigating factors if you believe them to be true. Now, one of them listed here is that at the time of the offense, the capacity of the defendant to appreciate the criminality of his conduct, the requirements of the law, was impaired as a result of bipolar disorder or other mental illness, and you heard from Dr. Allen that.
Thank you, Stray. And tomorrow night I am having a membership welcome stream, everybody. Just a moment, I will post about that.
Dr. Allen, as opposed to the other two experts.
Sent by the goat, and he is the goat.
And he concluded that to the extent that the defendant had bipolar disorder at all, if that was even true, he was not actively suffering from it at the time of these murders. He was not compelled by bipolar disorder to commit these murders. He was not in a manic episode. He saw the interview that occurred 2 days later. You saw the interview as well. And Dr. Allen told you that mania is appearance, even a casual observer. And you could tell from your own observation of that interview. He was not excited, not suffering from some compelled need to speak. He was calm, he was answering questions as you would expect somebody in an interview to do. So you can consider this. I would ask you to consider the veracity of it and find that it is not true based on Dr. Allen's testimony. The same for C, I'll skip to C, and that is that an intellectual disability caused him to be unable to appreciate the criminality of his conduct or perform his conduct to the requirement of the law. Now, there's no doubt that there's some intellectual challenges. Experts disagree on the severity of those. You've heard that it's hard to get an actual read because of his lack of effort. The IQ test, the earliest one, when he was 10 years old, showed an IQ went back for 86, taking him into the low average range. And Dr. Allen told you can't stay up, which indicates it might be down range down to 86 would be a more accurate representation because that is the highest one. And that is before he had motivation. In all the subsequent tests, they were things like trying to get disability.
Oh, no, that's so sweet.
Oh, thank you so much, Luna. You are awesome.
Yeah, she
So
is.
much fun.
She's always, she's been around since forever. And we
She's like one of the original ones.
She's one of the OG harem girl.
Yep. So thank you so much for the super chat. You are so sweet. Oh, Val is awesome.
Val is awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't know. The sentencing phase is always weird.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like, he didn't do it. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. And then they're like, oh, yeah, he did do it. But, you know,
This was the defense attorney. They all float. They all float down here.
I'm sorry, I totally forgot it. Forgot it was back here. I went to switch a window and I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to send it. Better late than never.
No worries. I loved it.
When he was 16 and in school.
You can, resize it.
There are reasons to put in less than full effort on those things. But regardless of what his level is, he still had the capacity to appreciate that his conduct was wrong. He still had the ability to make different choices about this conduct. And so, based on what Dr. Allen told you, I would ask you to cross out C. True as well. Now to return to B. At the time of the defense acted as an accomplice in a capital offense committed by another person. He was the one. They were the accomplices to him. Sure, take into consideration their sentences. They each got 10 years. Corey served until he was paroled. Anwan at his 18th birthday was placed on probation, and we'll see what happens down the road from that. But this total sentences were 10 years on charges of facilitation of murder. So that's 10 years for being forced by Brice Rhodes to take a knife and stab people that he had already killed. Yeah, they should have said no. I doubt it. Together, trying to get out of the situation. They should have, when he left from there to clean, run out onto Brownsboro Road and flag down a car and ask that driver to call 911. They didn't. They're paying a price. But if they want you to consider those charges, those sentences relative to what he should get, 10 years for being forced to make temporary statements.
That was the live stream I was watching. Valhalla.
Yeah.
I had the R word.
Oh, yeah.
A lot more than those boys got.
Oh, okay. That one.
The youth of the defendant, if you consider 26 to be young in this context. Any other circumstances? You've heard about his childhood. This, I believe, cuts both ways. No child should have to see his mother be the victim of a domestic violence situation. That's awful that happened. And that's
YouTube is
probably
weird.
why we see some domestic violence charges in his history. That explains that. But also, there were parts of his childhood that he could have made different choices. He had a loving stepmother. Sounds like his father was very involved. Not all children get trips to Disney World and get read Harry Potter at night.
Wait, did she just bring up Harry Potter?
A lot of what we know.
I heard Disney World and I thought I couldn't understand.
Because is that why he's got like a Band-Aid on his head, back of his head, because he's got like Voldemort there? Obsessed with Harry Potter. I made that joke 3 times, but now it's officially perfect reference.
It is perfect. Have you ever been to
No.
Universal on the Harry Potter train? And when you're on the train, well, I'll talk later about it. Remind me.
These last few days come from reports about what happened. For instance, we've heard no direct testimony of what exactly was going on with his mom. We've heard what his stepmother told the interviewers. So weigh that how you will. And again, I'm not saying that there wasn't trauma in his childhood. But there's nothing from that that indicates he doesn't have control over his decisions. So you consider mitigating circumstances that you believe to be true. And there's no system in Kentucky where you add some points, take away some points based on, like 3 years for this, minus 5 years for that. No, you just consider the whole of it as you decide on where in this range you choose to fix the penalty. The aggravating circumstance that is listed here is whether you believe that the defendant committed the offenses of murder intentionally and that they resulted in multiple deaths. And this is something you considered 2 days ago when you were deliberating, that these were intentional murders, and obviously they were multiple murders. So hopefully that won't take you that long to reach that same decision. And what that, under the law, what that allows is these two additional penalties here that wouldn't be allowed if those were not the case. So if you don't find that to be true, these would be your choices. If you do find that to be true, you will also get lifetime parole for 25 or lifetime parole. And again, I believe that you have already found this. I hope you will continue today find this aggravating circumstance to be true. You are allowed to consider his past criminal conduct, which started with intimidation, 3 counts, possession of a handgun without a license, for which he got 4 years. He also, around that same time period, committed 4 counts of armed robbery, criminal confinement, for which he got 12 years, but was probated. And that is of interest to us because he later violated that probation. In 2013, which he would have been 22 then, his birthday is September 1st, 90, so in August he was 22, he committed an assault 4th domestic violence. He violated his probation twice. At age 23, he committed 2 counts of battery resulting in bodily injury, received a 1.5 years, violated his probation. In 2014, so age 23, assault 4th domestic violence again, and he violated his probation in that case. And at age 25, he murdered 2 people. The government of 2 different counties gave him chance after chance on probation, and every time he violated that probation, he was not able to live under the conditions of probation without being brought back to court and revoked on them. Chance after chance, and it didn't stop what happened here. And that is one reason that I'm asking you to give a sentence of life without the possibility of parole, because we already know that that did not, the supervision of the probation parole offices of 2 different counties did not reform his actions and did not stop this from happening. So you're allowed to consider all of this. So then you just go through the instructions just like you did on Monday. They're all listed here. Verdict form number 1. You pick if you do or do not find the aggravated circumstance of intentional multiple murders. And then on the corrected copy, you will see that there is a list where you check which one of those penalties that you believe it should be. I don't know how a family processes the loss of any loved one. I'm sure you never fully do.
Hey, Mustang McCracken.
For jobs can say to themselves, the last day he was still conscious, the last thing he heard was Officer Franklin saying, "Hang in there, buddy." The last thing he felt was Officer Franklin holding his hand.
Yeah, I gotta agree, Young.
Have no such peace. Their deaths were not. They each died alone and betrayed by people they trusted. They each died knowing the other was somewhere in that room and not knowing what would happen to the other.
Mustang. There was a Mike McCracken in a recent trial that we covered.
And I do not think
I'm sure you're not related, though.
the Ordway family should ever have to go to sleep at night not knowing where Brice Rhodes is. There are multiple reasons for the prison system. Rehabilitation is one. Punishment is one. Removal is one. And I would argue that the 2 latter are what is most important in this case. I don't want you to punish out of passion or anger, but out of justice. For what he did to these 3 people, their whole families. ask you to remove him for life without the possibility of parole, so that they never have to worry about this again.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will begin your deliberations again now.
Let's see, have we got?
Maybe some milk in a little bowl, young. Maybe seeing his phone baboon.
Oh,
Where did Kitty go? Where did my kitty go?
my kitties are licking each other very obscenely right now.
Oh, they do that.
They do. They like to
They
lick each
do.
other.
They do. It's really interesting that your cats do that to each other.
Babu sometimes like just goes up to Junior and just starts like ripping hair out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like bite and just. I have to yell at him.
Daniel, you've got Judge Judy on, do you?
I need to add her to mine.
Cats.
Really?
Yeah, I have
We
two
all have
sister
cats.
cats. I went to get a cat, a kitten for the girls, children.
Mm.
And I couldn't decide. It's a super long story. Did you ever see the movie Finding Nemo?
A long time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Okay, well, you know, when the fish were in the aquarium with the dentist and Darla came in, fishy, fishy, fishy. Well, the people that I was buying the cat from, their daughter was just like Darla. And
Oh, that's nice.
the long and the short of it, I decided I'm just going to take home 2 litter mates because they were really little. They were like 6.5 weeks. And Darla wanted the one, and then she was trying to negotiate a higher dollar amount. I think I actually offered her more money, and she's like, nope, it's mine. So then I picked other litter mate, and turns out that not the cat I intentionally went to go get, but the other one is like one of the best cats ever. And then my daughter's cat, Poppy, that's in
Yeah.
here, she was the litter mate of one of the girls' friends' cat. Also, like really young litter, like 6 weeks old. And the people that got her said they were, I don't know how to PC say this, but maybe in their culture, throwing a cat into the woods that they don't want isn't like such a horrible thing, you know.
Okay.
So apparently they were threatening that if nobody wanted this kitten, that they were going to just chuck it in the woods behind their house. So I couldn't live with myself. I didn't want another cat.
No, you can't do that.
I'm planning on moving. So I said, okay, fine, you know. And then, and oh my God, Poppy, she's like one of the funniest cats ever. She's got just cute, and she's little. She's like the runt.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so sweet.
Oh, I love little kitties. I've got one. She's like,
One
she
of
looks
the
like a kitten, even though she's fully grown.
Yeah, Poppy's just tiny. But one of the sister cats, the black one, she stalks and attacks Poppy. We have to keep them separate.
No.
Or there's like, it's not even like 1 minute and I'm in a panic. So it's just like a constant thing, keeping the door shut, keeping them separate. It's just Poppy's just terrified of that cat. There's my story.
Oh, you want to see a selfie I took?
Yes, I would love to.
No, she just had a phone call.
Poppy is actually in Lily's room right now, and Lily just said, put Poppy in my room. So
I don't know if we have a verdict or not. Kind of hope so, because I don't want to do this tomorrow. But
she's really cute. I wonder if I have a video of her. I might have a short
Thank you,
video.
Stray.
Okay.
Oh my God, Poppy's so sweet. If you're on my Twitter, I just posted a picture of her. I think it was last week helping me knit or crochet.
Mike Brown,
Look at my
thank
little
you for the
helper.
gift. Thank you for the
Gross.
gift. Very thoughtful.
What
Thank
a
you for the
gift.
gift.
Who's gonna gift?
Was this the sentencing?
Well, the jurors had to go deliberate.
Oh.
Have we found?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So it was less than an hour. Wow.
Well,
Okay, Danny.
I mean, it's not really wow, is it?
Well, wow, it was so short.
All right, so I
That's what she
understand that we
said.
have a verdict from the jury as to sentence. First of all, I want to thank all of you. For
Probation.
sitting through emotional testing.
58 minutes and 27 seconds, apparently.
So 2 whole days.
Yeah.
For that.
It only took them 50 some minutes.
Testimony without disrupting the trial. I appreciate that very much. And I sincerely hope that that continues once the jury is back in. Once you leave this courtroom, you are free to have whatever reaction you would like to have. But while in the courtroom, I ask that you not have any reaction to whatever the verdict may be. We're ready.
I gotta make this large so I can watch his stupid face.
All right, for the jury.
Thank you, Deputy Mills. I'll be seated. Has the jury reached a verdict? Thank you, Mr. Foreperson. If you could please hand the verdict forms to Deputy Mills.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Did they normally get fashionable glasses like that in prison?
No.
I thought they just
it
got
is
like
lawyer.
the plain black
sir.
plastic frames. Have we ever determined what his tattoos are?
One of them says
Do we
pussy.
care? Oh, really? I'm sure that means cat.
Council, would you all approach for just a moment?
Oh, Lord.
Or the little willows that grow out in the swamp.
That reminds me. What happened to the thing? You took it away.
Nothing's happened yet.
You didn't. You took this away for a minute. It's gone.
Oh, because I'm doing recording another trial, and it'll pop up on that stream. FYI. So, yeah.
So there's a
Why
method to
would-
your madness.
There
Why
is.
would it do that?
I'm the
'Cause
same way.
all the StreamYard,
Oh no, his Band-Aid is coming off.
I know, the StreamYards are all linked. So, like, if I make a change on the banner or whatever, for whatever reason, it
In the
shows-
matter of Commonwealth of Kentucky versus Brice Rhodes, the jury's verdict is as follows. Count 1, murder as to Christopher Jones. We, the jury, do find beyond a reasonable doubt that an aggravating circumstance exists in this case and fix the defendant's punishment for the murder of Christopher Jones at life without the possibility of parole. For count 2, as to Maurice Gordon, we, the jury, do find beyond a reasonable doubt that an aggravating circumstance exists in this case and fix the defendant's punishment for the murder of Maurice Gordon at life without the possibility of parole. As to count 3, murder Larry Ordway, we, the jury, do find beyond a reasonable doubt that an aggravating circumstance exists in this case and fix the defendant's punishment for the murder of Larry Ordway at life without the possibility of parole. For count 4, tampering with physical evidence, we fixed the defendant's punishment for tampering with physical evidence at 5 years. Count 5, abuse of a corpse, Maurice Gordon, we
Yes,
fixed the
John.
defendant's punishment for abuse of a corpse at 1 year, or 365 days.
He's flipping
Count
them
6,
off.
abuse of a corpse.
Why is he
Larry
doing
Ordway,
that?
we fixed the defendant's punishment for abuse of a corpse at 1
That means fuck you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It
Did
came
you
down
guys
from,
used
like-
to? Did you used to watch Friends?
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I think it has something
Same
to do with
thing.
like the plaque on your teeth. You're like flicking it. That's where it like originated from in like the 1600s, and it just kind of evolved to.
I might have to grow a
1 year,
beard.
or 365 days. We, the jury, further recommend that the punishments fixed for the defendant as set forth above be served as follows. All sentences
I hope it's concurrent.
to be served consecutively, meaning one after the other.
Damn,
Signed by the four.
darn. That makes all the difference.
Would it make any difference?
No.
Yeah. No.
But he does
still,
get
it's
credit for time served.
Does
It's the
he?
principle.
Yes,
It's the principle.
Yeah, it is the principle. Yeah.
he gets credit for time served though, so that's not that. It's not all bad.
Person as to all counts. I will now ask you
Oh,
if
really?
this is your verdict. Yes. Okay. All right, jurors, thank you for your service. I will be speaking with you a little bit further in just a few minutes. I'm going to have you go back into the deliberation room, and I'll be in there in just a few moments to speak with you, and just for a little bit. Thank you all.
All right, okay.
Is it wrong?
he's not
I'm
gonna
sitting here
rise.
wondering what's in my craft
He's not
box
rising.
that I can make and stick to my chin.
He's not rising. Look,
Oh.
See, if we were on just Rumble right now, I'd be cursing. No, I wouldn't be.
check him out. He's the only one not rising.
Anyone who wishes to leave now may do so. We need to set a separate date at which the court will have final sentencing.
What sort of
Yeah.
timetable, judge?
Yep, Denny Don, that's it.
So ordinarily, we would pass 6 to 8 weeks. And I think in this instance, it would be prudent to go into mid to late March if that's acceptable for you all.
What?
Jingle minks. I hope I remember to clip all y'all doing that chin.
And should we perhaps put this case on in the afternoon where we have a little more time, a little more open of a courtroom?
That's fine.
All right.
I will.
How about March 13th at 1:30?
Oh, God, he just disgusts me.
It was a valiant effort, defense. We're gonna appeal this, right?
1:30 p.m. Is there anything else that we need to address from any party?
What do you want to bet when they were playing the
Judge,
should they live
there
or
are a
die
number of
game?
other
He was
reasons
doing that while he
were
was
assigned different
thinking.
courtrooms. Judge Cunningham just took them all to make this easier. I will make an offer on those so we can wrap it all up if they so choose. Otherwise, I guess they'll have to be redistributed back to their respective courtrooms.
No problem. Anything from the defense?
I just want to, if we could have those all set on the docket that day
Oh,
as well.
good
We
question,
actually have
Danny
already
Don.
discussed
I
that
missed
with the
that
clerk. We
part.
will have all of
Well,
the
that's what they were
cases on
talking
the
about for
docket that day.
February future
Mr. Rhodes, I
sentencing
do
hearing.
also want to advise you,
I
although
mean,
you're very
why-
good attorneys, and I'm sure that they have, or
There's
will
a
discuss this
sentence.
with you as well. But you absolutely have the right to appeal. Just like
Damn
with
straight.
this case, if you are
Oh,
unable
thumbs
to
up.
hire an attorney for that appeal, then the court will appoint an attorney to represent you. Knowing these lawyers, I'm sure that they will walk you through that and talk with you about that. And we will see you all in March. Thank you.
March.
Oh, he shook her hand. Oh, that is.
Aw.
Oh, he is a class act. That guy.
I hope
Oh.
class act, yeah.
I'm sure.
Oh,
I'm sure he could have been rehabilitated. That one.
I think he now can be.
I think
Yeah, that's
maybe you
it.
might be right.
That's the nicest.
They
he's been in
Unfortunately, the
7
jury didn't see it that way.
I know. They should have seen him like shaking his lawyer's hands. That would have made all the difference.
Okay, Half Irish has a good comment. Why wait so long? Settle him to prison. So while he's waiting this hearing in March, does that mean he just gets to sit in the jail again?
Yeah.
Oh, so he might be like Danilo Cavalcante, maybe, and try to see if he can spring out.
Yeah. He'll be in,
I agree. He
jail.
should just go. I mean, there's his sentence. We know where he's going to be. Why don't we just park him there? You can get comfy.
It's not technically you're not supposed to put somebody in prison unless they've been convicted. Unless you are the Delphi unaliver, then that's fine. Alleged Delphi unaliver. But jail is what's chat? Help me out. The guy for the Delphi case who unalived
Richard Allen.
Yeah, he's in prison right now.
He's in prison. Yeah, see,
Because
and
of
for him,
security
they got it
concerns.
wrong.
He's not been convicted.
No, he hasn't been. He's supposed to be in the jail.
Yeah, and it's not until you're officially sentenced that
They
you go to
didn't cuff
prison.
him. I didn't notice that.
I noticed that, John, what's with that? Like, usually they ride onto these dudes as soon as the.
Yeah, that is a little weird considering all his
That is
prior
very strange.
shenanigans. I think, yeah, sometimes like the bailiffs are right there, and the second they hear him guilty, they shackle them.
Stray, he got life without parole for the 3 deaths, and then he got 5 years for charge 4.
5.
And then I kind of checked out for the
It's
use of the
consecutive,
corpses.
one after another. I don't want a piece of corpse.
Basically, he's never going to get out.
Yeah,
But that is
unless he appeals this.
Oh yes, there's always that.
He actually looked kind of surprised.
Oh,
Don't you
he's all
think?
smiles and handshakes.
Yeah.
That is weird. He didn't get handcuffed.
I mean, I'm sure he's in cuffs at this moment, but
I know,
or,
but that's like what they
seconds
do. They
after.
put, as soon as they're like, "Okay, you're done here, fella,"
Yeah,
and it's like chink chink, and off you go.
Yeah, I don't think this judge is going to overturn it. She doesn't.
probably.
Nah. She.
Well,
she-
Lefty saw the fall of Minneapolis. What did they do to Derek Chauvin?
Yeah.
Like they basically squashed all but one avenue to appeal. They added all that. I mean, they're like, okay, we'll give you, like, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
They've said not only this is your sentence, but you have only one way to appeal.
Really?
Lefty's from Minnesota too. Don't you know? Oofda.
Oh, it's messed up.
Yeah.
I don't think she's afraid of him. I mean, if she's afraid of him, then like without parole is what you want. I don't think this guy has a lot of people outside. He's not.
I'd be interested. I'd be interested to see, was he, just a regular old gang member, or does he have like some kind of posse? Because if you noticed, when the jurors walked out to their car at the end of the day, the judge would mention, "Wait, make sure to wait, and we'll have you walked out to your car." That would concern me.
I mean, he mainly hung out with minors, so it's, I don't know, anything's possible, but.
Well, I think it's pretty safe to assume that whole community is effed up.
Yeah. That is.
I mean, when Ann Juan Carter testified, I think I said this yesterday. It's like I got the impression in that community, you are born, then you go to school, then you drop out of school and join a gang, and then you go to prison.
Basically.
And don't have a dad.
Yeah.
It is horrible. It's horrible.
Hello, where did you go?
I don't know where she went.
Okay.
There she is.
So we're going to be ending.
How about that?
Oh,
are we finishing up or?
Yeah, I am. Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's a good accent. So yeah, tomorrow I don't know if we're doing anything.
Well, I'm doing an evening stream, but I thought you might want to stream in the afternoon.
Yeah, I might do something. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Because I've been taking up all the days and afternoons.
I know.
So it's free
Okay.
reign for darling.
All right, I'll let you guys know tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll probably do something, but I'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dolly
But tomorrow
Unleashed.
night,
Brace yourselves.
tomorrow night, I have my welcome to memberships stream at 6:30 p.m. So it's
6:30
hella
p.m.
yeah.
I will add to
Hello.
my list.
Hella yeah. Memberships are on, and it's going to be an Aussie themed celebration. So you are probably not going to understand the names of my memberships, but that's okay. Not yet. I'm going to it's all going to make sense because we're going to go through a list of Aussie slang words that you probably never understood or never heard before. And thank you, Dean Dawn. Nice to meet you. I hope to see you back again. Yeah.
Oh, MLS is live in 9 minutes.
Oh, let's post this.
Yeah, make sure that we do
Thanks,
post
Irish.
that.
I'll go over
Thanks,
there.
Hub
Last
Irish.
night I was so entertained. I went, I don't even know where I was. I was here and then, or I was on your channel. And then I was in the chat of I don't even remember. And it was fantastic. One after the next. And then they'd have little Christmas trees in the chat or little symbols and they'd say raid. Oh, Mo. There was a Mo raid. Yeah. Oh, there was an EU raid. That was it. Because I'll put little alarms.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. EU. That's that last that was like a train for hours. It was awesome.
So I live membership welcome stream Thursday 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is 9:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is Friday. For you Australians, it's an Aussie themed celebration, slang explained, and we'll do some dash cam fun. So you want to see what crazy stuff happens on Australian roads? Oh my god! Wait till you see it. I might have to turn that not members only. I might need to turn that 18 plus because there'll be lots of C words and F words and all sorts of things. It'll be nasty. I was just looking at some and it's pretty full on. What's that ever doing with that seer? Yeah, so that'll be fun. That dash cam channel is lit. It is lit online. Yeah, indeed. So join me for that one 6:30 p.m. tomorrow, and we'll do lots of fun stuff. That's it. I want to write an emu though. Yeah, have fun and write emus and dingoes and all that stuff, and they'll bite you. It'll be a short stream, but it'll just be a bit of a fun one. Yeah. For the evening.
Thanks again
Don't
for
worry,
the raid,
Dolly. Don't worry, Dolly. Get a little nap in between work and doing the stream.
All right, guys. I will see y'all later. Bye.
Lovely. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Have a wonderful night. I don't know if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. I just finally concluded over there on Sal's stream. Boy, my hair is even worse than it looked over on that other one. Pardon. So that's the end of the Brice Rhodes trial. I know today was a little tiny bit of a snooze fest. Hi, Valhalla awaits. um, 5:57. Oh yeah, I had this going, and then was basically live streaming his because I didn't know how to do it. I use Restream. I have a subscription to Restream, so I can go on Rumble and Kick and YouTube, and they use StreamYard. A big long story. Thank you for coming over here. Hi, Christine. Hello, hello. So I just came over here to say goodbye and end the live stream from Sal's. And yeah, I'm glad that he's going to prison and lock away the key because he's a tool. So anyway, I don't know what Crime Spies has next. I am going to be doing the Twin Flames three-part documentary from the one that was on Prime Video. Even though it's not, I mean, it's sort of a crime. They really should be in prison, in my opinion. They're like a social media platform that people pay shit tons of money to try to find their twin flame. It's really good. There's a Netflix one that came out right about the same time. So if you're new to my channel, for stuff like that, the documentaries that we do, usually we start at all three: YouTube, Rumble, and Kick, and then just to get settled, and then I have to cut off YouTube before we start. But all the links to the other two channels are or to Rumble and Kick are in the description box. We just did the Cult of Mother God on Sunday. It's about 3-4 hours ish. It was really good. It was really good. So hopefully, we'll do Twin Flames maybe this weekend. I don't know. So, alrighty. I was telling Sal that I've had a heating pad wrapped around my arms like a little muff. So anyway, all right, everyone. I hope you have a blessed evening. We've only got 4 days till Christmas Eve. So we'll find something to keep everyone occupied. MLS is starting now at 6. I can't redirect on YouTube yet. Actually, on Rumble and Kick, let me add his redirect because I can do that on yours. If I can find it. MLS, making law simple. It's called Legal News Update number 4. So here, let me put this in your chats on Kick and Rumble. Here you go, Kick. Here's the link to the chat. No, to David's. Update. Apparently, there's another turtle boy arrest. Paste. Oops, that's not right. There you have it. Let's see what happens here. See, now that shows up. Interesting. Dun, dun. Oh, for those of you who use Rumble, guess what I found today? I found today that they actually have a brand new feature called static. What's it called? Okay, Rumble. You just got the link to David's chat to live streaming. Here, can I show you this? Let me show you this. This is pretty freaking slick. Share. Oh, God, my hair looks very bad. Looks like a catastrophe. There. Okay. Hopefully this won't give you a seizure. Okay, so on Rumble now, I just noticed this. Check this out. Or not. If I have too many windows open. Weird, it's just spinning around in a circle. Okay, never mind. Well, what you do is you go into live streaming. Oh, come on now, Rumble. Don't give me the spins. Rumble like froze on me during Sal's live stream too. I don't know. Okay, well, never mind. But if you go under live streaming now, you do have an option. It's called beta. That's weird. You go under live streaming because, you know, it's such a pain in the tuchus to set up a live stream. Well, for starters, hi, Lefty. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, so for Rumble, like you need to upgrade. If you use StreamYard, you have to upgrade your StreamYard. If you use OBS, it's totally fine if you only want to go to Rumble. But if you want to go to Rumble and somewhere else, like YouTube or Kick or whatever, then you have to have Restream. And Restream integrates YouTube and it integrates Kick, but Rumble still RTMP, but Kick actually is a RTMP, but they integrate. Doesn't matter. But with Kick, it's nice because I just had to like put it in there once, and then that's it. Like it's, you know, Crime Spies, yada yada live, or whatever it is, and then the key for it is just the same every single time. Where Rumble, every single live stream, you have to set up your intro like loop video that plays before everybody gets in there, like if you haven't started yet. And then, which is fine. And then a title and a description, and then you can use that as a template. So like with the Brice trial, I just had to like change the date and sometimes the times. But no matter what it is, it's a different RTMP and a different stream key every single time. So Rumble now has a beta, static, stream key, and you can have it for different templates. So for me, I do like subcommittee hearings, or I do like watch parties of documentaries, or I do press conferences or whatever. But at least, or I do trials. So at least you can put, I could just have one like basic one, and then I never ever have to change it again. Because that's something when you're on, you know, a live stream and you hit the go button, you know, for sure YouTube is gonna, because YouTube is static and so is Kick, but Rumble always changes. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense. I'm getting kind of tired. All right. Well, thank you so much. That was really fun. 2 days in a row, I was a guest with that wonderful crew over there. So that's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. Alrighty, I'm going to end and then I'm going to go get something to eat. Meanwhile, I'm going to be in MLS's chat. So for now, we will see you soon. Goodbye.